Oh, talking about all. Village board meeting. Okay, I will. Okay. I'm calling the village board meeting of January 3rd, 2023 to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Hartman,
Present.
trustee Bratton,
Here.
trustee Brunner, trustee Brooklyn,
Here.
trustee Polmakowski,
Here.
trustee Calvater,
Here.
president Lightfoot.
Here, please stand and remove your hat for the pledge of allegiance. Up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are at public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the village board on any issue. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes. While the village board encourages input from residents, it may not discuss or act on any issue that is not duly noticed on the agenda. Do we have anybody for public comment?
Seth Johnson.
Seth, can you come up to that mic and turn it on, please?
Seth Johnson, 5002 Laufenberg. Want to comment on a couple of items. So first, the Brewery Road reconstruction. Ready to go approve it. Looks like a good plan. I think a good balance of providing a safe space for pedestrians and bikes. Having a pretty minimal impact on landowners. And I think the traffic calming aspects of basically narrowing the field of vision for drivers, leaving the center line, adding traffic calming. I think that's all good, and that will help reduce the speeding that we see on the street. So, what I like the plan, the only thing I consider is potentially adding white lines to delineate the parking lane. That also kind of helps narrow the field of view, especially when there's not cars back there. It might help further reduce speeds. Up on the north section, it does look like there's gonna be some impact to some of the trees in the backyards there. I appreciate, those are my neighbors, but as someone who walks along there a lot too, there's things that can be done to minimize disruption or potentially, I don't know if there's anything in the budget, place any trees that might be taken out. That is nice for their privacy and also for shade and windbreaks for people that are walking along. So you can see that. Changing gears on one of the last items is for the Economic Development Committee. I was a former member of that committee when we had it before, so I like the idea of bringing that back. I think making sure you have some composition that includes people that maybe aren't business owners, regular residents of the village as well, but as long as you have a diverse representation, I think it's a good idea to bring back. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Is there anybody else for public comment that are here? All right, how about on the internet? Do we have anybody? No hands up at the moment. Nope. Okay. We will go to ceremony. Chief, do you wanna? I know the judge is gonna do the swearing in. Did you want to say anything or anything?
So, after our extensive search, we have hired Anna Masters as our new officer. She has started field training already. We plan to field train her for several weeks. And she's just getting kind of used to the community, and so today is her swearing in ceremony. So we're glad all my staff is here. I really appreciate that you guys took the time to show up. I know some of you thought it work, so that's really appreciated. Yeah, she's a great person. Her family is here to join her also, so we welcome her and we thank you for putting us on the agenda.
Honorable Judge.
Good to see you. Never met you before. And I have a little bit of vested interest in swearing in the new officers because inevitably they end up as clerks in or bailiffs in my court, and so I depend on them. So Hannah, would you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Hannah Masters,
I, Hannah Masters,
having been appointed as a police officer of the Village of Cross Plains Police Department,
have been appointed as a police officer in the village of Cross Plains Police Department.
gotcha. Swear that I will support the constitutions
Swear that I will support the Constitution
of the United States of America and the state of Wisconsin,
of the United States of America and the state of Wisconsin.
and I will faithfully and impartially
And I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of my office to the best of my ability.
discharge the
Duties
duties
of
of my office to the best of my ability.
the masters,
I, Hannah Masters,
swear that I will abide by the code of ethics
swear that I will abide by the code of ethics
adopted by the Cross Plains Police Department.
adopted by the Cross Plains Police Department.
On my honor,
On my own,
I will never be betrayed of my badge,
I will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
my character,
and character.
or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself
I will always have the courage to hold myself
and others accountable for our actions.
and others accountable for their actions.
I'll always uphold the Constitution, my community, and the agency I serve.
I will always uphold the Constitution, my community, and the
Agency I serve. So help me God.
law.
Congratulations.
Hey, Chief, could you introduce the person who's
Yes. that's
getting the badge on?
Hannah's father, who is, pinning her badge right now.
Hannah, could you just stay up here? I'd like everybody to introduce themselves to her. This is the village board. We'll start with Doug.
Doug Brunner,
Cody Bradman.
Brian Mooney,
Cameron.
Michael Pomikulski.
Judy Peter, nice to meet you. Welcome. Nice to meet you.
I cried on her earlier, but she didn't come on, but she.
It only got better since.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. We look forward to it. Thank you very much for serving our community.
Thank you.
All right.
You should have texted.
All right, consent agenda. Upon request of any trustee, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration under general business. Does anybody have one? I have one, number 9. I would like removed. Number 9 is the posting of the village. I don't have a concern with the posting. It's the second part of it.
So I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented minus item number 9.
All right. So I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. So moved. Report of village officers. I have nothing. We have a full agenda, so almost everything I have is on the agenda. Vice President,
No, you did.
all right. Other trustees report. Doc?
2 quick ones. First, I want to thank everyone for the sympathy regarding the loss of my mom. She certainly loved Cross Plains and will be missed. And then I wanted to recognize and appreciate the dynamic efforts of Chief Tony and our police staff in 2022, as outlined in the annual report.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll go. Oh, I'm sorry, Cody.
We had a pool visioning session, went really well. Online survey is still out there. If you haven't seen it, check your local Facebook pages. I'll set it out there again. I don't know if we have a final number on how many have done it. We had a lot of good support for the pool.
Well, good. Thank you. Village administrator.
Okay, I have just a couple of quick announcements. At one of our most recent village board meetings, we spoke of the Middleton Cross Plains School District School Resource Officer. That contract had been approved. We received notification of that. There were no modifications to the contract, so everything went through as we shared that. The second update, Dane County hazard plan, that was something that we had put through and passed. I believe that was with the August board meeting. We did receive notification from Dane County that FEMA has accepted that plan for all the participating communities. So that just occurred this last week. And my last agenda item, we just began having monthly village department head meetings to talk about a few of the items related to budget, salaries, and things of that nature, and some of the monthly, some of the updates around the village. So we'll provide updates on that front as those meetings move forward over the coming months.
All right, thank you very much. Under other reports, we have Chief on your police department's 2022 annual report.
So I hope everybody had an opportunity to look at it. I won't rehash it page by page. You guys have a long agenda items and several things to discuss, but some of it obviously is a repeat from last year. Nothing's changed as far as the oath and the ethics. Village officials have changed, and you'll see our organizational chart with a couple of people retiring. Or adding, obviously we've added a couple of positions. I guess the biggest thing that I just like to point out, and just so I get it on record, we are, last year we had over 2,800 calls. If you recall, when I first started here in 2020, in 2019, they had 1,600 calls. So that's an increase of about 1,200 calls, which is about just over 70% of call increase. A lot of it just has to do with our very proactive approach to law enforcement. I believe as you can see our statistics, you can kind of compare year to year. I put in 2019, I put in a 4-year comparable so you can see what's increased. Some of the key things that have increased is just, for instance, open doors. In 2019, staff had 2 open doors. What does that tell me? That they weren't checking doors, because that's just too low. In 2022 and 2021, we had 77 and 60, which means, they're obviously checking a lot more doors and finding a lot more businesses open. Those are business doors. Some of the other statistical things that you'll see too is our traffic complaints in 2019 were about 148. Those have significantly dropped. But what's increased is our productivity as far as traffic stops. So that's usually the way it works. You don't get many complaints and you see people stop. As you can see, the violations were really down. The traffic stops were in the 90s. We are nearly 500 traffic stops last year. So that's a heck of an increase, and that's a lot of productivity by my staff, myself included. So our increases decrease other topics like traffic movements. Just going on, you'll see some of the projects and programs that we started to become part of. Restorative court, that is going well. We've referred a couple of kids to that. What that does is that program, instead of issuing citations to youth like the 12 and 13-year-old kids, this gives them an opportunity to restore themselves. It's a very prominent program in Madison, and Middleton does it. Several communities are now doing it. Just gives kids an opportunity to keep their name kind of clean and give them opportunities to restore whatever they've done, whether they committed a theft or some type of violation. We've partnered with YWCA. It seems to be working. Like I said, we've got a couple of referrals already. Traffic Safety Commission, now Kim has been assigned to that initiative. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of traffic fatalities and those kind of things, but they're getting closer and closer to here. We've had fatalities not too far out of town. And so he's now a member of that initiative just to see what we can do to prevent any traffic fatalities or any major traffic incidents. We do have our fair share of crashes, but again, we've been lucky so far, but he's now part of that commission to get that going. Nikki and I started a officer wellness program, and Nikki has gone to some training. Anybody who's ever talked to me knows that I really feeling strong about officer wellness. It's important because of all the cases and the situations that they have to deal with, and their minds are going all over the place. It can go from, having a vehicle lockout to a domestic to back to a, traffic crash, all within 2-hour time period. That's a lot to ask of a human mind. So having officers that have resources and understand their wellness and is very, very important. So we started a program. It's in the very early stages of the program. We plan to add more to it, but we designated a bulletin board at our police department regarding this, and we're going to make that grow a little bit more. As you follow down, you'll see some of the things that we've been involved in. Some of the things, an additional one was Oktoberfest. That went over well. It was something that the chamber put to light. Our involvement was minimal, but it was very well received in the community. We fed that we did a take your brat to work day. And so we made some brats, and people pulled into the parking lot and they took a brat with them. And it was just a very good PR event for us. If you keep going down, you'll see there was 250 hours of overtime by staff. We were able to control that. I had a lot of concern early on because of the things that were happening within the department. So I had a early meeting with President Langfeld and let them know that there was potential that we would be over budget. Thank God we were not that over budget on overtime. We were able to do some things to change things. But again, my hours, I put in 260 extra hours. I'm really gonna work on that this year, because I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years because I'm putting in all that extra time. So I am gonna work on that, and it's something that I'm gonna just have to hold myself accountable. What else? Future initiatives. I plan on, you'll see further on in the agenda, you'll be receiving our emergency operation plan, but I'm hoping to work out a tabletop exercise, at least start working on organizing one. Tabletop exercises take some time, they take some organization, but my hopes is to get one in the fourth quarter done sometime October-ish. But I'm doing some planning. Matt Hudson is helping with a larger one that we're doing with the school district. So I'm going to involve him in this one as well. Policies, and anybody who knows about policies and procedures, those things constantly have to be updated, and we have a couple that we need to work on and update. Field training manual is just about done. We've updated it and brought it up to best practices. We're also working on our website and Facebook page. You'll be seeing a brand new website that will actually be part of the village website instead of us being on our own. We will actually be right with and I think that, you don't want to send people off to other places to find us. We want to all be in the same spot. So thanks to Becky. Becky has been instrumental in making that work. We're hoping to start a scholarship program, which to start promoting people to go into law enforcement. I don't know what that looks like just yet, because we're going to need contributions from the community, and I don't know what that looks like, but it's just kind of a thought, an idea. It's a good PR tool. We had it in the city of Darlington, but we received donations to support that through our DARE fund. We obviously don't have a DARE fund, so I've got to get down thinking and get my staff involved in that. The award recognition program, that's a due for sure. We're going to start recognizing a couple students out of each school for doing good positive things and showcasing them, and kind of like what the Optimist Club does every month. That's kind of where the idea came from when I was there at one of their presentations. I think it's a good thing for the police department to recognize people, and especially our community members, because throughout the year there's several community members that help us out. And so this is an opportunity for us to recognize them with a simple award and kind of a handshake. And then the last thing that you'll probably keep seeing, at least during my time here, is my hopes is that before I retire and move on to my next life, that I can make this department accredited by the state, which is, if anybody, Jake, if I attest to it, it's not very easy. But that's my goal, and I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna really work hard. The good thing is Middleton is about done with that, so Troy and I, we have a really good relationship, so he's gonna be able to help steer me through that process. It's just, it's a big undertaking, so. But I do want that to be on our new building as an accredited agency, and there's a lot to it, but it's important. So that's my report, unless somebody has questions.
Judy?
When you mentioned bear program, do they not do that anymore?
It's kind of dated. It's just dated. It's, you know, it's lost its time. It was really heavy in the '70s and '80s. I think it's been replaced by other things, other components. But DARE itself is kind of went off, because I think DARE really focused on drugs, and now there's a lot of focus in sexting, sexual crimes, those kind of things. So it's kind of opened up other avenues where before that was a little more taboo, and now it's, so I think that's why DARE's kind of phased out. But we, you know, Roger spends time teaching different things that the school would request, but there isn't DARE programs that are, there's some still active, but they're kind of.
A lot of them went to protective behaviors.
Oh,
Because that's more
they
broad.
get it, it covers everything.
Yeah.
I get it.
And like abstinence only for sex, like abstinence only for drugs has not been
Right.
successful, generally speaking, in this country.
Yeah, that's sort of broadened that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I had an arrest in my former job, and the guy was wearing a DARE shirt when he was carrying drugs. It's kind of-
I have a question.
Go ahead, Andy.
I was just looking at the data, and the one that stuck out to me was the check property vacation check, 585, and then even just check property 109. That's like a lot of your time spent checking people's property.
So we really encourage that for people to not just leave and not let us know that they're gone. A lot of people rely on their neighbors and those things, but we're on patrol, so if we, you know, we're the ones that are going through those neighborhoods. And after a while, if you really are kind of being vigilant, you will notice something out of place in a matter of seconds, even though you're just driving past a neighborhood, because you'll know that car don't belong there, or that, you know, that isn't right. So people have given us a lot more vacation checks because of the PR aspect of it. So then officers try to check that daily. So if somebody's a snowbird, like right now we have probably 6, they're checking those daily. They're, you know, notifying people if something has been left open, because people are still having other people check. So, and all of a sudden we'll find an open door or something that someone else forgot. And so it's just kind of a checks and balances. And if you see it, we're not getting the break-ins and, you know, I mean, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But, you know, reality is that the more visible we are, the more people that might be driving by and looking for something might.
I read it like running in my mind, like, hey, can you please check?
No, this is where they
Proactively
fill
letting
out
them
the form, and then we proactively
Okay.
check. Now, we don't, if we are busy, we might have to miss it, you know, might have to not be able to check it, but sure. The guys are pretty good at checking those things. So.
Any other questions for Michael?
With the increase in the traffic stops from the 90 to like the 440, like, how many of those are warnings and how many of those are
You
citations?
can see the traffic arrests, there should be right there, so it's about 60. So, in 2022, we had 72 tickets.
So that's what the arrest
Yes.
means.
And so those are 72 traffic arrests. There might be multiple tickets within that arrest. But that 72 times somebody received a citation
Out of the 400.
out of 400. So it's not heavy handed policing. I mean, that's something that we would curb right away. You definitely don't want to see that flip number where you see, you know, so close, where it's 446 stops and 430 citations. That's just, you guys would be receiving complaints if that was happening.
So what is a traffic complaint then? Is that just somebody
Somebody
calling,
called in,
saying
yeah.
someone's tearing around or blowing stuff?
So, so if you see, like in 2019, we had 148 complaints. Somebody called, said, hey, there's a possible drunk driver, there's somebody just moved to a stop sign or whatever. To last year, it was 87, so pretty comparable to 2020. And consistent across the board. I mean, nine's not overly crazy.
I'll just make a comment similar to what I said in the trustee reports. You know, I think the engagement and the visibility has reduced complaints. It certainly reduced complaints that I received about traffic. Certainly we still get them because there's traffic moving through town, especially at rush hour at both times. But the engagement and the visibility, I think, helps us all. And I think it was very interesting to see the correlation very clear from complaints to more stops, more engagements, more lift checks. So I think the community policing that chief's leading is working.
To answer further your question, like OWI arrests are not counted as traffic arrests, and we had 10 of those. So that would also be considered a traffic stop. And then, so there's a couple of those that kind of stick in there, but again, it's not 10 OWI arrests. That's nothing. I mean, we could probably triple that, I would imagine, but you know, the officers do a good job. They're visible, they're vigilant, they're responding to calls, they're watching for things. So really good department. I'm glad to be here.
All right, thank you very
We're
much.
glad to have you. Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, we will go to general business. The third- oh,
You just didn't ask if anyone else.
Well,
had anything.
Well, I'm looking under here, there was nothing else listed on my agenda, and I feel something.
Just wanted to, thank Becky Ward for all of her work on the website redesign. The new revamped website will be launched the afternoon of February 14th, so I'm gonna look forward to that.
All right, general business. Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'd like to say something. So on Friday, was obviously given a letter of resignation from one of our employees. I just wanted to put on the record to thank her, Andrew Ford, she was leaving the village after 9 years with us as our recreation and aquatic coordinator. So obviously she's done a lot of great things for us, and we're trying to continue on with a lot of the things that she's obviously brought to the table, but it's kind of difficult timing right now for us to get things all the way back in the morning for the summer. So I'd like to thank her for 9 years of service, and I wish her the best on the next adventure.
Thank you, Mike. Jerry, do you want to say anything before we move on? Since I get wrong twice, you all right?
Yeah.
All right. I think it's safe to go to general business. Discussion and possible action, Brewery Road final design plan. Ryan, I saw you back there. Why don't you come on up then?
By way of introductions, I brought with me Mr. Robin and I.
Oh, why don't you come up too?
Engineers, he helped a lot with the
Yeah, we're nice.
design to date. You probably will see him a little bit this summer. So, what we've got for the group's digestion tonight, and selfishly ask for a thumbs up or down to go to bid with this. Is what we would consider our 95% plan set, that last 5% just kind of needing that thumbs up or thumbs down from this group. We've incorporated all the items talked about previously, but a few other ancillary things have either shown up or been follow-ups from those decisions. So just to hit those, we've got Brian, if you can go to the sheet B1. After these and after the issues, obviously. One phenomenon that we hadn't identified in this group yet is what to do with the path as it goes through driveways. Kind of two options there. It's an asphalt path, so just run asphalt baby all the way. Which if you run through an asphalt driveway, that's just a big cross of asphalt. If you run through a concrete driveway, you break the concrete, run asphalt through it, concrete off it. What we've got shown here, however, is the inverse of that, which would be if you have a concrete driveway, you would drive on gray concrete all the way from your garage to the streets. and pedestrian cyclists, they would change material as they crossed your driveway. Some of it's, this is perfect right here. Some of it is just aesthetic. You know, if you prefer the look of a nice long ribbon of asphalt. Other folks prefer the sort of the visual cue to the bikes and peds that there's a driveway coming, so maybe I better be a little more careful. Engineering wise, it's 6 to 1, that turns the other. Cost is probably a little less costly to go with asphalt through them. We showed them like this because in our experience, folks that have a concrete driveway like to have a concrete driveway. So, any reaction to that?
Yeah, I went down and there's 3 driveways that are asphalt. That's what I saw. I personally think the way you have it planned is the way it should be. We should allow people to keep their concrete driveways and I think concrete is better than asphalt. Even though we would maintain that path, it may not be at the level that the owner has on that property. So they have concrete and I looked, a lot of those driveways are in pretty good shape. There's a few that need some work, but so I just think for them driving on and off, I like the visual of bikes. They know they're coming to a driveway when they see the change. So that would be my preference, and I think we get less resistance from neighbors if we're versus tearing up their concrete driveway. So that's just my opinion on, you know, I put myself, if I was living there, and also just wear and tear.
I should say for the question we got for the group tonight, a lot of them we can always change midstream too. You know, during the project, if you hear from residents that, oh my God, I wish it was different, you don't have to build exactly what you see on the screen in January.
Would you be reporting like their approaches?
Yeah, so what you'll see on the plans, anything that's shaded gray is new concrete. Anything that's hatched in that 45-degree pattern is removing existing concrete. So we'll always remove concrete to a joint. We never saw a slab in half or anything. So we survey the joints. That's why some people have more or less driveway replacement, just based on where their joint pattern was reported.
So the one in the middle where
It's asphalt. That's an asphalt.
currently asphalt.
Yeah, so we'll have to saw that back. Depending how amazing your eyesight is, those are actually little dots
Yeah,
on the asphalt one that is a shade for new asphalt.
is that something where a homeowner could say, you want to pour it all, you're pouring it here? Can we pay an additional amount? 'Cause
We
I
have
can see
done that in
someone
the past, yeah,
asking that.
if a resident is interested in it. We'll always, and we'll have a public meeting for everybody once we have a schedule on a contractor. If you're talking to residents, it's not always a great deal. The companies that do municipal street construction, they like hogging it out, a lot of production, and it's not necessarily cheaper because they sometimes don't want to work that bad. And so always worth calling, and we'll always make introductions and exchange phone numbers, but it's not always a bargain depending on the summer.
What's the story with the match line right there in front of the house?
That just helps you match this sheet to the next sheet,
Gotcha,
kind of like
okay.
an ad magazine.
And then what's the likely outcome with the tree that is more or less probably rooted underneath?
We've got a couple of trees coming up in the discussion. That one, we don't, and we always talk to a resident, we don't need to cut it down to build the project. So we wouldn't necessarily cut it down unless the residents have vacated. Those 2 dots next to it, those are its sanitary sewer lateral and its water lateral that were installed when the house was built prior to that tree being planted. What we'll generally do in those cases, the contractor will start digging towards it and we'll see what we find. You know, it's possible that the wheel spokes of those roots, we just miss them. Or you only hit 1, or you only hit 2, and then kind of depends on species and how much attachment that resident has to the tree, but that guy could be in trouble, we just won't know until we did it. There are some trees, that we'll get to in about 2 minutes, that are probably a little more problematic.
Okay.
But while we're here on, I guess first, any aversion to the driveway treatment we talked about?
I do not have them. No.
I'll probably keep it and we'll go from there. Next up,
Like keep the concrete.
yes, sir.
Okay.
What we've got here is also the first of a number of traffic calming ideas that came out of previous meetings. One, you'll notice that the double yellow line down the quote middle of the street is not down the middle of the street. In fact, it's offset to accommodate parking on one side. It then comes to the middle as you approach Valley, where the stop sign as well as a raised concrete median. That's that, it looks like a sliver here, but it'll be about 3 feet wide of concrete there. So enough to notice it if you hit it, but shallow enough that a semi can make that turn and just drag this trailer over. As we go to the next sheets, I'll highlight some of the other traffic calming items.
Are there any signs sticking out with those?
There will be, yes. These are more schematic. I wanted to kind of get this group's reaction before we really detail them out, but yes, they have signs on both sides. Once we get to Bear, a couple things happen. You go to parking on both sides so that I'll keep calling it the air quote center line does do another jog here at Bear Street. We've got 2 opposing eyebrows, we'll call them. One north of and one south of Bear. Again, to kind of channelize people, make them think twice about going too fast because they lose a little maneuvering room. Those locations are picked to avoid people's driveways to allow them to make lefts and rights. So that's why the northern one is a bit northerly compared to the southern one. It's just to find those gaps in driveways to allow those folks to make ins and outs. Then if you keep headed north on the next sheets. We do a couple more jogs, crossing the creek. We look to narrow things up a little bit to minimize the cost of that set of culverts that'll go underneath. And again, accommodating a shift in parking. You can see that eyebrow is the same eyebrow from the previous sheet. And then on the next sheet, we've got another pair of twin features north and south of Laufenburg. The northerly one is a bit more aspirational, planning on folks, more than just those dozen houses up there eventually coming down, but for the dozen houses, to slow them down a little bit as well. So those are what we've got proposed for traffic calming. There was the comment earlier about potentially striping the parking lanes, which we've done in other places and in that super high cost, of course. So wanted to just get everybody's reaction to thumbs up, down on too much, not enough traffic calming.
Well, I guess I like everything except for the one at the intersection of Valley and Brewery. I'm not, since that stop sign on for Brewery, I'm not sure why we need to have that calming. And it just seems, I'm worried, you say with semis making that turn, but if you have signs on each side of that, there's a sign that they're not gonna clear you. So that's just my thought. I'm not sure what traffic we would be calming, because the stop sign should slow everybody down to that stop anyways. So that would be, I like all the other ones, that would be the only one that I would probably remove, not sure why we would need it.
As someone who drives that every single morning, it's because when you're coming down Valley Street, you tend to go wide toward, like you're taking the right here that we're looking at. The way I come, which is coming the east, the other way, same thing. Cars tend to cross into the center, and there's a bunch of walkers there. I don't know. I think that makes sense. And when I saw that one, I was like, "Oh, thank God."
Is that gonna become a 4-way stop?
I mean, I think it should be in the future, personally, but that's just me. But when I saw that, I was actually, well, this actually is a good thing.
All right.
can that become a four-way stop? Or-
I don't like the calming there. I'm with you though, actually, Jay, because I do walk a lot also. And I do feel like there's a stop sign there and I can see how you say they come around, but if the traffic's there, besides hitting a car, you have to get over. I don't like those as well. Like,
I'm still trying to figure out how the semi could make a turn on to that if there's signs up on it.
It would just
We-
come
we
down.
got-
Brewery.
Yeah, we've got templates, so we'd run an imaginary semi through there and. move the sign.
Oh, okay, so you might move it back a little bit, that, gotcha, okay, that makes sense. Alright. I mean, I'm not big on it, I just curious on what it's calming, that's all.
Well, that intersection generally too,
It's terrible.
yeah.
Well, it's a terrible intersection, yeah, I walk through it every day,
So
but,
like anything.
I don't
you
know.
can Do to,
but the cars stop, it's an intersection because it's high traffic. There's a lot of cars at rush hour coming and going both directions on Valley and that. Like I say, I'm just, cars come to, when I hear traffic calming, it's to slow down traffic down so they can react quicker. So like I say, I don't have a problem with it. It divides the lane, lanes very easy of, like you say, who's going north, who's going south, but I'm just, that's my only thing. I'm just more worried that the signs are gonna get knocked over all the time with the plows and
yeah, I'm not adverse to that too, I'm just wondering. You know, I'd be okay moving it back a little bit, you know, potentially, but what is the negative to having that there exactly?
I think just because it's a stop sign. So rather than calming, they are coming to a stop. They gotta stop. Right,
But,
because that's where the stop sign is.
But I think it's designed to calm the people turning potentially.
It's also getting them in the right lane, that's got changes.
right, that's what yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think I can see the advantage of it.
Michael,
So then with this being done with like that yellow line being on there, like you're defining like what side parking is gonna be on with the drawing, the parking is gonna be on the side where the houses are. Because obviously that's the larger lane.
Yes, sir. Yep,
Gone.
that's what we got proposed right now.
Okay, and then further down. Does it switch sides? Does it stay that way? And then what happens to that? I'm trying.
It sort of wanders, at the next transition, we've got parking both sides.
Which of that?
So then it is right down the-
There,
Yes. And then,
and then further on, it goes to the other side, like for the north end, so it's there, both sides, and then.
it's one, thing that you can't quite get with 4 different sheets. That double yellow does a lot of that. Kind of intentional. So when you look down at 6 months from now, it'll look drunken. Which is also part of the point, but yes, it does. Also favor the side that has parking necessarily just to keep maintenance.
Okay. All right, that was one question. My other question is like, we're talking about these traffic calming devices, which I'm not sure I'm really in favor of. Entirely at all, just because we put one in on Church Street where that crosswalk is, and if you go and look at that one. The one edge of it was a edge, and it is now completely flattened out by being hit, I assume with snow plows, trucks, everything, it has been hit. So that's not an edge, it's a rounded mound on the one side, the other side has some pretty good gouges in it as well. Also with that traffic calming thing on Church, there were signs on it, they had to be removed because. Farm implements.
I was behind.
So putting signs on these things might not be a good idea at all because it just hinders. There's a farm up at the top of that hill that I assume, do they drive equipment down that road?
I've never seen a tractor on a river, but maybe there is. I think they come in from the other side.
No, I think Hendricks, I've seen.
Do they go down low? They can't.
No, it's just the concern with signs that there's somebody's bringing large equipment down there.
Not long.
You know, regardless of if it's semi or not, but I
They
know.
could take left on or right, left, coming down the hill.
I've seen, it's Bill Hendricks, so here in 14, I've seen him come down like Weber's, Del Brewery Road and come all the way down Valley and then come here.
Oh, he does come down, okay.
You want this, if it helps the group, you want this have to decide on signage plan tonight, both selfishly, and I guess our advice would be, we'd like to get this out to bid And if we are at a point where everyone's comfortable with the brick and mortar stuff, or even mostly comfortable with the brick and mortar. Our recommendation would be, let's get it out to bid, get a contractor in and like the signage or even the presence of those concrete things. Those can always be modified, eliminated between now and concrete before they really, the contracts are all set up on a unit price basis. So it's per foot of curb, per ton of asphalt, per square yard of grass planted. It's just in large part to accommodate these kind of changes in the field. Certainly for signage, that's something that's the village has typically done on its own anyhow, not in the bidding documents. But and to your point, definitely those get chewed up. Snowplows, they hit them pretty much every time.
Right, that's what, since Jerry's here, I was gonna ask him, Jerry, do the snowplows hit that mound on Church Street often? Where the crosswalk is?
They may have the first year or two, but no, we pretty much know where it is.
But what about putting 4 or 5 or 6 down Brewery that, I mean, especially if it's a slalom course with them not staying in a straight line.
Anything you put in the streets gonna slow down or aggravate the snowballing process. Yes.
And so when you hit one of these, they can do damage.
Yeah, but we have way more manholes than we'll ever hit these things, and they. So, we can't do those.
Okay, I was wondering, trying to. You used to always not want speed bumps anywhere once upon a time. right?
Speed bump is a different animal than this.
Okay,
I think too, the intersection you're talking about is narrower and doesn't have a stop sign right there. That you're talking about on Pete.
oh,
And it's not at a bend.
And the driveways are, it's a different, I think it's probably a different animal. That's a busier road and it's a thoroughfare right there. And it backs up right to a driveway or two, so I agree that wasn't, signage for sure wasn't the best one.
well, yeah, no, because.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, can I?
Yeah, keep going.
You had, I noticed. You were gonna talk about the north end with the trees, and on the one drawing, it looked like there was a rock wall or something. Could you elaborate more on that?
I may play taskmaster a little bit, can we group down to the traffic calming?
You want, sorry.
Otherwise, we're gonna get a little. So
Right,
what are,
right there next up.
so what are people's feeling on the traffic calming?
I would move to approve.
I like them, I think they will have an impact, which is what we want.
All right, let's just see a show of hands on who would want the calming, traffic calming. All right, so I guess we'll go ahead with that.
Then, of course, if any other questions come up, please, now or later, give us a holler. Last, function of all the design things coming into place is in fact that north end on the west side. The combination of existing trees there, right there. You'll notice there's a line type, that's a dash, short, dash, short, dash, short. Those are the property lines. Those are the pieces of property that individuals own, and then the space in between on both sides of the road is right of way. There are a number of trees that are just in the right of way. Either because a seed fell there or somebody planted it 40 years ago. Which is compounded by the path existing. Fitting that path in there, you can kind of see right behind it, there's some more of that 45-degree hatching. That's the existing curve that's there today. And we're we're robbing a couple feet from both sides of the right of way. Here, so on the east side of the road, we're moving the curb a couple feet. And on the west side of the road, we're narrowing the road, but we're adding the path, so that extra couple feet. Then gets further multiplied by a fairly extreme grade change. There's a pretty good bank going from street to backyard for those homes. Which ends up needing to create a bit of a shelf there for a flat area. We can only tip the path so much before it becomes ADA non-compliant. So we are unable to figure out a way to leave the road in the middle-ish of the right of way and at a path and not have some about, in some areas, a foot, the highest it gets is about 2 feet of retaining wall there just to hold the dirt back. You wouldn't necessarily need a retaining wall because you do have enough land to simply grade it back. We're not talking a huge heights. You have the horizontal footprint. However, it would remove a lot, I'll say, of trees, a lot of trees. So we've got a couple of things for the group to consider. We did lay out in the field staking that shows this path in the real world, right at it. Some trees just need a bit of a buzz cut, limit up, be fine. Some other ones, I do not think would survive. What would need to happen to build this path where it is. So, this fork in the road is a little trickier. We can do a couple things, but we're gonna have to compromise on one of those 3 ideals that we established in previous discussions. We could pull the road east. You'll notice at the north end, we have to blend back into existing Brewery Road in the town, which is quite narrow. And offset a little bit in the right of way as well, so one advantage of pulling the road eastward is it kind of lines up a little better with the existing Brewery Road, which will be gone whenever, if ever Sundance goes away. But that would create a little more separation from those existing trees at the expense of the east side of the road. We take moving the footprint eastern, further east. We could narrow / remove the terrace. Right now, we've got a 3-foot terrace, grass strip between the path and the curb. There's a fire hydrant in it right now, but we can move the fire hydrant. That would buy us 3 feet, which gets us further from the feet of those trees. Probably would still need a retaining wall, about a 2-foot high retaining wall in order to just hold that bank up and help improve the trees' chances of longevity. Or cut the trees down, and it's an option. I doubt it's palatable, but that's there. In one perspective, they're on doors. Okay, and this one's a little trickier. Also, and maybe more than a 2-minute discussion. In the theme of the other choices, we don't need a decision tonight. We'd love one, but we can certainly go to bid with this and again change things. We don't have to build it exactly as it is. So with that, I'll shut up. And
Are you just talking about from like the slash down to the north?
there's actually
Or more,
an
a lot more
address
than that.
which is.
If you go down,
3020.
I looked when they marked it, it's the white pines that are up near, just across from Laufenberg. And then there's where it really gets hit, there's a line of the cedar trees.
Yeah.
And if you look, the stake is right in the line of.
So the back of the cubes.
For Dave
and the
Furry,
back of the cubes out.
would that be Dave Furry's house too?
Dave Fury and Hughes, and then
Right.
there's one.
Yeah.
And then the ones farther down, those to me are more bushes than trees.
For sure, 3 properties in particular, so it would be 30-20, 30-30, and 30-38. Hillside. Would see some significant vegetation loss.
What about, having it cross and then moving that side to the west or to the east?
That was an earlier iteration of the
Yeah.
path, was crossing the path to the other side. That eliminates that need to have a flat spot with 9 feet of clearance for a person on a bike.
If I remember right, the reason why we didn't, when I have it on that side was further down Brewery for the retaining wall and.
Yes, yeah, so you could certainly flop it once we cross the street, or excuse me, cross the creek. And right at the,
Cause that's not gonna impact very many people at that point.
No, it's only one house, but you can see that line of trees, but I don't know if it would impact those trees or not. There's a whole line
they're a
of
bit
trees. that-
younger, they're
Yeah, they're definitely small.
younger, smaller, take a bit of a punch / even be moved maybe.
I mean, or even just after the creek.
Yeah, I'd probably say right after the, maybe right before Hillside Trail. You can shift that over to that one.
I just don't know what's
I think
more,
that-
is it moving street eastward? That one.
What is that little rectangle, just a portable shed?
Yes, sir, very sure.
Cause Blue lost, there's a couple bigger trees and there is some room in those yards to put some trees more further back. I don't know if they have interest. But some of the trees got taken down.
So- If we eliminated the terrace, what percent of those trees would be saved? I would think the white pines would, the cedar might be a problem. Still, I don't know if 3 feet's enough.
The cedars scare us.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
I think everything but the cedars would be okay.
And you're saying that's technically village property where the trees are located.
I mean, technically, very
Okay.
good.
Just wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty close up to the curb.
Now,
My only
moving the,
concern flipping it is now you got all the traffic coming one block, now they're crossing the street and then going.
Well,
To save a few cedar trees.
my concern is if they ever were to develop up there. What are we gonna run into further up the path? Are we gonna be coming down one side and then?
Well, the
switching?
design right now is to have it on the side that we're on.
Right, to go all the way.
All the way up.
And then I know once you go further up Brewery, it drops off in the backyards, so you'd have to build that up, put walls there. Whereas if it stayed this side. And I don't personally, I don't wanna see it have to jump the street, like if it's gonna be a long-term high-dollar project. I'd rather see it go straight. I feel bad with the loss of trees. Can we offer to plant more?
Well, that's the thing. I think, Brian, if we did a combination, how about losing the terrace and moving it more to the east?
That would certainly,
You're saying the terrace by like the traffic calming?
No, the terrace, there's a 3-foot terrace between the path
Yeah.
and the curb, so bring it up to the curb. And his other option was to move it more to do both, and we might pick up 5 feet potentially. Again, it would get us farther from those cedars, but like I say, they're pretty much up to the curb line
and there's
But
always
they're
the
pretty-
option of simply, it'll look awful. But not from his patio, you just limb up the cedars. You know, if we can get past the trunk,
yeah.
then you just do a haircut. And it doesn't look awesome.
But from his side, it would be okay, because he's not seeing the back of the street side anyways.
At that point, from a snow maintenance, you wouldn't really need the terrace because it's all backyard. You could push it to the side that way.
Yeah, the only thing with where the cedar are, that's kind of, there is a hill there. It's,
Okay.
it's probably one of the steeper spots, I thought. And I don't know if they mounted it, then put the cedar trees on top of that. It kind of looks, it doesn't flow.
And we could definitely fill the terrace and swag it 2 feet east, so it swag the road 2 feet east.
Right.
To gain 5 feet, and that would make them. Get us to a point where I don't think we would need to cut anything down, kind of back to that previous question about the ladder. Be more finally defined from a rent standpoint. A lot of times, and we'll talk to the residents at the pre-con meeting. It's impossible to get a crystal ball and say, well, you know, it's gonna, if we hit this roof, it's gonna die in a week. No, it'll be fine for a year or 2 or 10. It may get sick, just like a human. But it eliminates the need to cut it down because we're going right through the damn trunk. That would get us there.
It also doesn't make any sense to have it cross at that 4-way right after the creek, because then they're just gonna have to cross along.
Yeah. Well, are people comfortable with trying to remove the terrace there and shift it? Jerry, how about you? And we wouldn't have to remove the terrace for the whole thing, just for that,
No,
just that section.
right at the one just south of the garden shed.
Yeah.
What is the terrace?
It's the 3 feet between the curb and the path.
Okay.
And you have that, so
Still
there's some
grass.
room for snow.
And
Yeah.
My neighbors.
What's that?
mailboxes.
Yeah. But again, that's the backyard, so I wouldn't worry. There's only one house on the east side of that.
He's got a question.
Well, this is closed. We had open comment, so. Sorry, you just. It's gonna be with us. I don't wanna. What are people's thoughts?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I like it. You know, shrinking the terrace, eliminating and moving it eastward.
You're getting rid of the terrace, okay, just by the path. Or what you're proposing is removing the terrace just on the path on the west side there,
And only
Yeah.
for that
and only for that.
300 feet.
For that, yeah,
400 feet, excuse me.
1,000 yards.
But like, I mean, there's still a chance of, I mean, you're gonna run into roots and stuff there, like, you know.
Still a chance.
There's a chance,
Yeah.
but 5 feet away is much better than.
I'm sure,
Right
right
on.
through the trunk, I understand that, but.
Are you proposing this for where those cedars are also?
Yeah. And then I would think we wouldn't need,
Already extend 3 feet in the existing street.
say that again,
The branches of those cedars already extend at least 3 feet into the existing street. You can't follow the curve there.
right, but those would get shaved off for sure. Because for the path, I mean, the path would take you farther away. The curb would be farther away from those trees than it is right now.
Correct, but the path would be in about the same space.
Yep.
Currently, we can't even follow the curve, so there'd have to be some drastic pruning.
For
Yeah.
sure.
For sure, I think we all agree, but I think it's an easier sell to prune the east side of those trees than to remove them. I don't know, maybe the guy doesn't want them and he'd love if we took them down. At our cost. I have no idea.
We have not reached out to those residents at all. We would definitely want to knock on their door and let them know this what's happening. So if I may paraphrase, if the group's kind of coalescing around this, being 3 feet by filling the terrace, get another 2 by wagging the road east. Then we'll just go knock on the guy's door, like, do you love these, hate these? Or you're gonna be replacing them, you know, cedars don't live forever. And those are long, you know, too. If he doesn't want them, we don't. This could be a moot conversation, but I didn't want to go to him without.
No, I understood that. Cameron?
The other thing with the terrace is there's a similar path over, going by the middle school there. The terrace is kind of nice for like people walking dogs who like don't want to get near people, or there's a bike where like they can go over and park, and you would just lose that, and you know, because you wouldn't want to. Well, you could, but you wouldn't want to go up the hill to the yard or whatever. I feel like people would be more comfortable if they needed to do that in the terrace. You also have things that are closer to the road.
Are they currently a problem with public works? Because if you can't plow to that. as it is. maybe-
But there's a number of spots in the village where limbs are over the. But but this, I mean, if you think about it, it would actually solve that problem. But now we would have the same problem with it being over the. Yeah, no matter what we do, we're gonna have to trim.
And I'm thinking, we got to trim a bunch potentially, we're already, who knows what we're kind of, like, what are the odds that these cedars live anyway?
So you suggesting we just take them out?
No,
Oh,
well,
okay.
I mean,
Going dark really fast.
Yeah.
I like trees, to be super clear, but like, the tree is a lot more temporary thing than the shape of the road and if there's a terrace and all that stuff, so. We should make a very careful decision here if we're going to move the road and remove the terrace. Because that will probably never get undone, where these trees would just die after the project, after we made all of the accommodations for them anyway.
I would agree with that. The only thing is, would we still need to put the retaining wall if we moved it 5 feet away? And if so, wouldn't it be a lot smaller?
It would be a lot smaller. We'd have to check across. I think it'd be shorter in height and shorter in length as well. Just because we're getting a lot closer to where that existing curve is.
Right. So that would be another advantage of pulling it out. There'd be less retaining wall to worry about and maintain.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that, but then you also do shrink again, if you got someone walking a dog who doesn't do well getting near people, you've now gotten. Them trapped in an area with.
Well, they're used to walking in the road right now, so if they had to step aside to the road to let someone walk by, I'm not.
Just making sure.
No,
we're about it. That's
yeah,
all,
no.
okay.
I mean, I think it would be beneficial for us to consider planting something in lieu of or additional to what exists. I don't know.
If we remove them or.
Regardless of what happens, if we have to trim and the cedars die, or even just generally, just if we're gonna remove the. I don't know what you call it, the boulevard, the strip of green.
Terrace, yeah.
Yeah, the terrace. Then maybe putting something on the other side to buffer the residents from the path, as well as just adding a little bit more natural landscape.
Yeah, I would think we could do grass. I mean, the cedars are packed together. There's just absolutely no room there. And we don't want to run into the same thing and put a tree so close that we're gonna constantly.
Whatever makes sense.
one
And I
side,
do enjoy the.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
What you're saying is because we're giving that space to the terrace, flatten it more so there's grass, so the terrace is actually on the others.
Which
The
also probably
3 feet would be on the other side, which kind of makes sense. It would probably happen now.
And the plants can help the terrace nonetheless.
Yeah.
With the grass we have in the middle of Walkenberg, right at that corner.
Yeah. Gotcha. Do you need any more or?
I'm gonna tell you what I think I understand.
Okay, well, that'd be good. That is a good way of doing it.
The board is comfortable with eliminating the terrace and shifting this northern reach 2 feet east. We will engage the residents there and let them know, how much do you love these trees? And if they say a lot, we'll just do what we just talked about. If they say, no, and I rip them out, or can I have you guys rip them out with a bulldozer, we'll say, you bet, we rip anything out with a bulldozer. And we'll stay close. We'll kind of do it.
Everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think that's the most reasonable way to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of those things. Okay, then we will. Tune up the plans and we'll likely be back. I think we'll have to we'll open bids in February. We may not hit your board meeting in February for the board, but I'll see what I can come up with on this.
And just because I'm trying to read this, but where it says silt fence installations indicated with the little dashes. Can you show me where we will be doing, are we gonna be doing fences? I was trying to-
Well, that's control.
Oh, that's for the.
Yeah, it's that flat fabric and.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Good job. That's confused. I'm like, wait, where?
No, we want to keep the dirt out of the Black Earth Trail.
Okay, which we, okay.
Can I ask a few other questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so. My first question deals with how did you solve the problem with the culvert with the creek going underneath Brewery Road? What is the plan with that? We've never heard what was going on with that, exactly.
It's because we didn't even have it on the plan yet. We're working with a flood modeling consultant who actually had worked on Black Earth Creek back in before the floods, helping the village navigate the updates to the FEMA maps back in 2011. They're modeling, they just finished modeling, actually, I just sent them an email earlier this evening. What we're gonna be replacing that single corrugated metal culvert with are two concrete box culverts, which is more similar to Laufenberg. This creek comes under there. So those will be reinforced concrete. The advantages of the double boxes are that it allows you to, from a construction standpoint, you can build one dry and then transfer the creek to that one and then build the other one. Also, it gives us a lot more room vertically. You don't need a huge arch that we're actually having a hard time getting the new curb and gutter on top of it. Here's the existing road is it's almost touching. So this gives us a lot more room to build a proper road above it and also give us some better footing for the guardrail. The guardrail will be replaced on both sides. So that's what's on the docket right. Not here yet, but it'll be on the plans tomorrow. There's two box culverts instead of one elliptical corrugated metal.
And boxes like squares with
Yes.
triangles, like,
Yeah, absolutely perfectly, I think.
okay. Alrighty, so, well, that's good, so it's gonna help with the flow then, or basically maintain
Yeah,
what is
we
happening?
will very deliberately not touch the flow. These will be set specifically to provide as much gallons per minute during the flood event as the current setup. No more, no less. We don't want it
Right.
more because we don't want to amplify the problem you've got where Brewery Creek comes into Black Earth Creek. We don't want it less because that will back up flood waters behind it. So we want to very accurately limit total gallons a minute during the 100-inch storm. We will be changing the angle of attack, which is in real world, not on a computer model, but in real world will help reduce the incidence of this crap blocking it. Corn stalks, fences, traffic barrels, all names of things that cause blockages back in 2018. We'll be able to help that angle so all the Watson and Jetson don't have to make a hard right turn to get in there.
So it'd be more that they would flow through that, is what you're,
That's the name of the game for flood debris. Let it go.
and get caught somewhere else.
Eventually, yes. Yeah, but hopefully closer to the Mississippi River than.
Right. Okay, so then I have one other question, and this was at the corner of Finnis and Brewery. Specifically, it got with the hydrant that was gonna be going next to that house, and it's on the far side of the path. I was just wondering why that wasn't being placed in the terrace at the intersection. Looks like there's some valves already in the street and you back the valves up on the
Great
far
question.
side, you know?
The,
What's going on there?
so that's a special hydrant in that it is available to fight fires. But one of its more regular uses will be cleaning out and draining the reservoir. There's a water line that goes up the hill to your original reservoir, which is
Right, it's right behind there.
yeah. So operationally, you like to have a fire hydrant outside the reservoir that allows you to drain the thing. And then for cleaning, inspection, those repairs, we purposely put the hydrant on the opposites, I'll call it the opposite side of the path, to allow that flushing. So the way you empty the
You're
hydrant,
gonna flush it into the creek and you dump the reservoir?
Yeah.
Because that's why it's closer there on that side. I was like, why are you doing it so close to the creek? I didn't understand.
yeah, otherwise we have to blow it across the path.
Right, and
Spraying people on the path, that kind of thing.
and it would just cause erosion next second.
Yeah, so this gets us right into the creek. Jerry and the guys do have equipment that uses the chlorine, so just in case that ever comes up.
Oh, so you're not
pouring.
putting that into the creek.
For sure, that's a very big problem in some places, but not here. You also notice at that same location, we have a wider than normal ramp that comes out onto the street at Thinness.
Is that what that is on the west side? That,
Yes,
I was wondering what the.
10 days out of 11 will just be for walkers and runners and strollers. And, but if the village needs access back there, it's wide enough to get a pickup truck through there.
Oh, that's what that is. I wasn't sure that was, it's a concrete ramp that gets you back to there. Okay, I wasn't, that was,
Kind of a
with that black rectangle around it.
those are the yellow, not yellow.
Yeah,
Steel
the gold
pads.
pan, okay, yeah. Okay, I was wondering what was going on there.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
And then the other hydrant was all the way down at Brewery and Valley, but it looked like you had to place that on the yard side just because the path was in the way.
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about? Or what, like, because the path gets close to the corner there, and you had to place it on the far side of the path there. Just watching your hydrant placements, just so they stay much of the terrace as possible, and then rather than yards. And then, are there any other flood control mechanisms that was incorporated into the design to help drainage and such? It looked like. Because you could, and you're just replacing regular gutters, right, with modern storm water gutters along the whole.
The gutters themselves will be almost identical. In every way, shape, and literally every shape. What you're gonna see from a stormwater management standpoint are a few items. More inlets.
Right, that's what I
We
was.
will have more opportunities for water to get in the pipes.
Okay.
That's great for what I call non-flood events. Lately in like 2018. You don't have big enough pipes, you don't have enough inlets, you can't afford enough pipes and enough inlets to handle that storm. So we designed for 3 different reasons: normal rains, massive rains, and stormwater quality. So the village has long installed catch basins with its inlets. Those are sump as part of the stormwater management on a modern street that collects grit, keeps it out of the creek. Normal storms are adding additional inlets, making sure your pipes are fully utilized, that in case one sucks in a garbage bag, that you got another one right next to it to step up and do that job. And then the last is flooding events, which we throw all the pipes away. We assume the pipes are either full of water or mud or slush or garbage. And how do we keep water out of people's living rooms at that point? And for this part, it's being very deliberate about the height, the opening of the culverts, being very deliberate about how high the guardrail is. You don't want, if we've literally taken measurements on the guardrail, how high is that now? We want it to be exactly the same height, because that's an impediment to flooding and an impediment to debris and an impediment to everything. So we look at those 3 different modalities for all street designs. This one's a little more special because it's in the creek. So those are the things we incorporate. Those 3.
That's great. Thank you. And then, just one other.
No, keep going.
With this design, there's a lot more painting going on the road. Double yellow, your crosswalk, some of your sign things. I guess, what does that contribute to long-term maintenance in terms of painting all this stuff? Because it's gonna have to be painted and repainted and repainted and repainted, and we don't do a whole lot of street painting or crosswalk painting right now. Just a concern that I have. I mean, do we need to have a crosswalk across Hillside Trail painted on the road?
I'd rather have a crosswalk in the event of public safety. If you say you don't want it and someone gets hit in it, where there could have been a painted crosswalk, what's our potential liability, if you will?
Well, yeah.
You're supposed to legally yield to anyone in a crosswalk, even though your brain, my brain would all say, well, it's a crosswalk. I'd rather see it painted. It's good for kids. It's good for everyone. I see what you're saying completely, but
I think the cost of paint to paint versus the visual safety part, the safety way outweighs the crosswalk. Unless you're suggesting you do like a colored brick or something, so it
No,
doesn't need to
God,
be.
no.
No, I'm not sure what you're just saying not do it at all because of the cost. That's what I'm hearing you.
Well, yeah, and it's not just cost of paint, somebody's gonna have to be out there painting it, it's probably the cost of labor is gonna way exceed the cost of the paint that's being used to paint, that's being done. The hourly rate of somebody painting is gonna cost way more than the paint, what I'm saying, then we get into labor issues, more staffing, et cetera,
Well, I could
this.
give some suggestions, like we could stop painting all these curves yellow. I mean, we paint a lot of yellow curves, and I think we could shift some of that if that's a concern to crosswalks instead of curb lines.
If we want to do that, sure.
I mean, there's a lot of footage of yellow. Yellow curves in this village.
I see him driving it around painting. I'm like, I would do that on a Saturday.
Okay, go on, Jerry.
Perpetual painter.
Jerry, go ahead.
Yellow curve is painted by a contractor, usually on a Saturday, sometimes on a Sunday. It's a side gig for him, for his regular job. We spend, including paint, spend about $300 a year on all the yellow paint. It's, one of the cheapest things out there that we're doing. In anticipation of the painting with this, the additional painting that's being requested on Park Street. Numerous other items, I was planning to begin the discussion regarding the paint issue at staff meeting here in February. I think I was selected a recent witness.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think it should be painted.
All right, well, interested to hear the paint solution or what you're thinking about.
All right, does anybody else? Brian, do you have everything you need? Do you want action from us to adopt this so it goes out to bid or you?
I don't need it unless you do. We got everything we're looking for. I'll work with Jerry, Brian, and Jay on actual schedules, but we'd be looking to try and get this on the street, this, if we can, I'm not sure we're gonna be back here with this February meeting, but certainly March meeting.
Well, I guess why don't we do that? Do I have a motion for approval to send this out to bid? I think we should have.
Yeah, so moved.
Do I have a second? All right, I have a motion and a second to do the Brewery Road, Park Street and Glacier Edge Square for bid. Any discussion?
I guess, do we need to, well, I mean, I know we talked at huge length, but the motion didn't capture any of the stuff we talked about, doctoring those trees and.
Well, I think that was all,
I know.
all kind of,
But.
if you want to do an amendment to
I-
list everything,
I
it just
don't.
seems a little complicated to me.
I just,
But at a later date, it's gonna come back here. for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, they're gonna go talk to the neighbors and stuff. That doesn't affect the bidding part. It sounds like if we can like do a change order or something. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Nay. Oh, okay. I guess we're ready to go then on that one, Brian. Number 2, discussion and possible action regarding contractor application for payment number 4 for 2022 water system improvements. Do I have a motion, please?
I would move to approve the contractor's application payment number 4 for 2022 water system improvements.
I'll second.
Do I have a motion and a second discussion?
I have one quick question. It just deals with the dollar amount. You want 159, but then when you add up all the columns, I have a hard time getting to 159. Maybe it's a 5% increase. Did I miss something? So this period was 142. And the other one was. I did something else. Yeah, it goes like from 142 to 159.
Where are you finding that 142?
Mine is the 142. page 3 of 5, it says this period, it says 142, like from the. Like, is that what it means? Work completed D this period, it's basically like what's being done. There's 142, 142. Oh, and then there's an $12,000 equipment, which would turn it into 154, and then it turns into 159. That's what, I was just looking at it, couldn't figure out how you were.
The, it gets a little more complex than that, because you're right, there's a retainage applied,
Right, there's some other percentages somewhere, right?
there's retainage applied, and then we subtract out stored material as well as previous payments, so,
Okay,
we're very comfortable with the arithmetic. I don't have a great answer for you, so.
I believe you, it's just, I was just looking at it quick and I was going, this has to be some sort of thing that's just not obvious, but weird retention than like what you're saying. Yeah, I just couldn't figure out the exact number from what was being done. It just didn't show the 159 was imputed, like obvious. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm all good with it, but it just didn't make sense. Like, it just was like, this is where we absolutely computed this number from.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
All opposed, same, so moved. Number 3, discussion, and thank you, Brian. Discussion and possible action, KP Trail Project Grant.
You're here with that.
Are you doing for that, or is
I'm
mine?
available until you kick me out of the chair.
Well, go ahead, someone.
So relative to some of the previous discussions about grant applications and kind of wanting to follow a framework for that. What we got for you tonight is a resolution to consider applying for some grants for what we've been calling County KP path. This is a connection from the boardwalk, we'll call it, right at Bourbon Road and KP to connect to the more recently constructed path at Scenic Valley. It replaces a bit of an informal asphalty sidewalk thing that runs there now. So you can walk it. It's very lumpy, very bumpy, very narrow, and very poor condition. To that end, Mike and I applied for some PARC, P-A-R-C, an acronym from Dane County Park Grant monies. A year and a half ago, we're successful in obtaining half the project cost, $270,000 of $540,000. Which still leaves the other 50%. There is a program through the DNR that can be used to offset your local match for that. That is coming up for application this spring. And we thought it would be worthwhile to get an application. So wanted to make sure that held water with you folks.
I would move to approve resolution 01/2023 presented.
A second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same. Thank you. So want to do the next one?
I can do it.
Thank you, Brian. Discussion curbside leaf pickup report. This report you've seen once before. What's added to it is the results, which is from staff and the community that participated in the pilot program. Tonight is just to, if you have questions over about the results or the data or comments you want to make. That's what it is. And then at next month meeting, there'll be some options for the future of the program. So I will open it up if anybody has any questions. If you want, I can do a quick overview.
Yeah, could you do that?
Sure.
I think it'll-
About 2.5 years ago, the finance committee looked at putting having curbside leaf pickup program like many communities have. We looked at using private vendors. We came up with what we could do here in the village. Probably about 2 years ago, the board approved the purchase of a used vacuum. And we had two programs. One was to take that section of the northwest side of town and pick up leaves there and see what kind of problems we ran into and how it worked, and just collect data. The second pilot was to use it down at the dropout site, and we asked residents to divide their yard waste into leaves only, other yard waste the other. So last fall, we were not able to do the first pilot program because we had staffing shortages. They used it down, the second pilot program did go, and we used it down at the facility with very positive results, in the sense that once we got used to using it and modified the truck a little bit, it looked like we reduced the number of trips to the compost site by 2/3. It saved time for staff versus using the front end loader. We didn't do this, but I think we can conclude that there was probably less fuel using a vacuum versus the front end loader. I think the engine sizes are very different. So that was successful enough that they did it again this fall. The pilot one we did this fall, where we handed out information to everybody about the program, and then we went from October 10th to the first snow and picking up the leaves in that neighborhood twice a week for that time period. Clearly, we collected really good information. They spent 86 hours, if I remember correctly, I wrote my notes. 86 hours in the actual pickup. There was pretty high compliance. It was interesting. The low compliance was when they went into the afternoon hours. The biggest problem was vehicles parked in front of the piles, and then we kind of picked a bad day. We did Mondays and Thursdays, and of course Thursdays is a conflict with garbage pickup. So staff had to work around a lot of parts. That's clearly a thing that we learned, that was not a good day. So and there's other information in there. We did a survey. I handed out 122 surveys to each resident in that area. We received 27 back. So it's a 22% return, not super great, but I think yeah. And if you read the results, I think it was interesting. I would say just almost everybody probably did a comment, put something in the comment section, and you can see at the end of this report is the actual survey results from the community. Some people spent quite a bit of time writing their comments, so I think there's a lot of good information there. The next step, as I mentioned, Jerry, Brian, and I will get together and we'll bring back some options for where the future of this program is for you guys to discuss. But I didn't want to throw all the data and the options, so I wanted you to give an opportunity to look at the data and maybe ask questions on how they were calculated, or when Jerry's here, he can respond probably better from staff. I just had sheets that they wrote short comments and reported hours and compliance with both programs. Jerry, would you like to add anything?
I'll just comment on your fuel consumption.
Oh, okay.
We can load trucks on the pile at the shop all week long on a tank of fuel. In the skid steer.
Oh, yeah.
The vacuum takes about a tank of fuel a day.
About a what?
Tank of fuel per day.
But isn't there less fuel in a tank for the?
No, the vacuum has a larger tank.
Oh, interesting.
Bigger motor, it runs continuous at full throttle.
Okay. Well, that's what that wasn't in the report, since I didn't have good data for it, now we do. All right, do I have any questions or comments that Jerry and I can answer since we kind of,
I loved it.
you live in that area?
My house was one of the pickups and it was great. I just raked to the curb and made my kids help and the next day they were gone.
Oh, good, okay.
Jerry, what's your anecdotal data personally?
If we go village wide, it's gonna be, that's all we'll be doing,
What do you mean, say that over?
6 weeks. But that's consistent with every community that does it.
Well, and I guess we'll talk about that in more in depth in February, once we get some options for you to look at. Anything else? All right,
Some of those comments were interesting.
yeah, weren't they? I found them
You
very.
guys used to do this whole village
Hey,
Well,
okay, sure.
when there were 1,300 people in years.
All righty, so next one. Discussion and possible action in forming a community development authority. Brian, you want to give an overview, just?
Sure. At the last village board meeting, I invited Mr. Cannon from the city of Baraboo over, former city administrator with Sun Prairie. He spoke of the benefits of how he in the past had utilized the Community Development Authority to finance public capital projects, capital building projects throughout Sun Prairie, and how the city of Baraboo just utilized the Community Development Authority option to secure financing to apply for and receive a loan through the USDA Rural Development and Community Facilities Program, which served as the financing for their village hall and police station project. So again, this is kind of a summary of what he spoke to last month, but also giving you some information about the program, the loan that we could potentially qualify for. The financing is great through that program. Right now, we're talking an interest rate of 3.75% for the first quarter here in 2023. Comparatively speaking, interest rates are competitively in the 6 or higher range at the moment. So this is a very good interest rate, especially for a loan the size that we're talking about for our Village Hall Police Station project. The Community Development Authority gives us the benefit of a nonprofit serving as the entity to manage the finance for the village on this front, which will allow them as a nonprofit to qualify for up to a 40-year loan term. Whereas as a village, we're just to apply for this independently. The max term loan that we could qualify for would be a 20-year term at this time. So again, there's a lot of additional paperwork. This is the first step in the process for potentially qualifying for financing for this Village Hall Police Station project. But again, when compared to some of the alternatives, I think this could potentially save the village a lot of money in the long term.
Judy?
That's a quick question. Are you looking for a motion tonight to go ahead with this?
Would be, yes,
Yeah.
motion to not that, I guess. What we would do is if there's interest in doing this, there's a state statute we'd have to go
Get a
through, we'd have to set it out. And I would want to bring it back so you guys understood exactly the commitment. We understand, as he said last month, that it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of work. I'd like to know a little bit more about that and what requirements are to see if there is something that might be a hurdle for us that we might not want to take, but so tonight is, you had a chance to hear the overview. The question is, do you want us to move forward and seriously looking at this?
Okay, so
So
do
that-
a motion first, or I got a couple more questions?
No, you can do questions and then,
Because I couldn't remember, did he say, is there any prepayment penalty if we did pay it off?
no,
No.
So I will make the motion that we go ahead into looking into the USDA RG loan, Community Development Authority, CDA.
A second.
Okay. All right, a motion and a second, I guess, I'm gonna make an amendment, it's not the USDA, we wanna set up a CDA.
Okay, CDA.
Once we're set up, then we can go after,
Okay,
so we have, the motion is to,
look into the Community Development Authority, the CDA.
correct,
Okay.
forming this, yeah, CDA, yeah.
No, I kind of have a question with the gentleman that spoke earlier. When he was saying like an economic development committee, is that something that could coexist as one unit? If not, like that would be something I'd like to look into, because if you have an economic development and a CDA, they seem to go kind of hand in hand.
You know, Tia, I don't know if we know that yet,
I don't know that.
but I hear what you're saying, and when we talk about it, that's what was gonna be my same comments, but. It's possible, I guess it's possible, we just don't know yet. On what state statute allows you to do as a CDA. At least I don't, do you?
I do not know that answer. I mean,
Yes.
that would be a good question to ask our attorney, and that can be something I can throw in.
Or
our
we just
staff
look at
meeting
state
and
statute.
statutes, yeah.
To see what the limitations are. Other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, say so moved.
So is that on approving your amendment, and then we have to vote on the,
Oh, that's a good point, yeah. So that would have been the approval of the amendment,
But nobody seconded it.
Yeah, I mean, I just
Oh, I
changed my
thought-
wording because I just read what it said, subject matter.
all right, let's do, okay, my motion is to remove the reference to USDA loan in the original amendment.
And I'll second.
Okay, second, any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. So now we'll go back to the original amendment, which is to look at forming a CDA for the village. Right?
Yep.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same, so moved. All right. 6, discussion and possible action, adoption of the Black Earth Crate Green Infrastructure Plan Resolution. Brian?
Okay, this was something that I had been in discussion with the CARP-C organization and Mike Piper about recently, our last village board meeting as well. We passed as a board approved me to go forward with an application for a green infrastructure grant to dedicate the parcel of land on the north end of the village towards flood mitigation improvements. This kind of goes hand in hand with that. That's part of the grand overview of what the green infrastructure plan is intending to accomplish. As you could see from some of the materials that I included, is more comprehensive in nature, but the grant application process is what's going to be utilized to help communities along Black Earth Creek in future flood mitigation improvements. And basically by adopting this plan in coordination with other communities along the Black Earth Creek, we'll have a higher point preference when we go forward and apply for future grants, which will help us qualify for or better chances of success on those applications.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I will motion for the adoption of the Black Earth Creek Green Infrastructure Plan / enclosed resolution.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second discussion. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. No move. Number 7, discussion and possible action, village emergency operations plan. Chief, you want to come up? I don't remember, has the board seen that or just staff?
This was staff.
Okay.
And I went to public safety.
Okay.
So I'm here to get a final approval.
Okay.
So this is sorry, this has been a project that's been ongoing for quite some time, and it even has updated since we last seen it as part of staff. It is an extensive, plan, that desperately needed to be updated. I have since updated even some other, things because it's constantly changing, so it's definitely a living document. If you'll see, the document runs for about 40 some pages. There are some things that are left out because they're systematic, processes that the police department would have in place, or the fire department would have in place. So we wouldn't want that out in the public, in case of a threat, we wouldn't want to give them our plans for that threat. So those are left just as placeholders. As part of the rest of this, there is a Village of Crossway continuity of operations. That just kind of follows suit with the plan. It goes beyond the plan. It basically gives us, more lasting information as a disaster were to continue on. We also prepared a template to be used quickly to make a declaration of emergency that Jay would be responsible for. That's already drawn up because during that emergency, as you will see, several of us will be wearing several hats, and we don't want to try to draw that up when we need to deal with the emergency immediately. Those kind of plans need to be in place so that we can get assistance, especially from emergency management and those kind of things. So it's been vetted over and over. I personally spent 6 months on this, working on it, looking at every line. It's been looked at by our staff. Jay was part of that, so he can give you some more insight on that. It also went to our public safety committee for approval. They have approved it unanimously, and so it's here now for you to approve this as our plan. This is part of my responsibilities as the emergency management director for the village, to have a plan. From here, we'll start utilizing it to do a tabletop exercise, and we can involve all of you or whoever wants to be involved. That right there kind of is the structure of our incident. That has actual names on it, but if you continue down, I did make another one that basically has positions, because those names change, and we've already had changes on that. So Scott's retirement, he was on there, and Andrea was on there as well. So we'll keep it moving, and then so this is created so that, if I was to be gone, somebody could just pick it up from where I left it off, and they could just go from where I left it off, so they can continue. That is the continuing of operation in partnership, obviously, with fire EMS. Describes a mission statement. Like I said, it's been vetted through multiple eyes, and it's been worked on for months. So that's my finished product, and I appreciate all the help from all the village department heads. They all contributed, they all assisted. We had one-on-one meetings about this stuff, and then we had group meetings. So that is the plan.
I would make the motion that we accept the action, village emergency operations plan.
I'll second.
Yes.
All right, discussion?
Yeah, I just have, this is one of the first emergency plans I've ever read. Is it typical to have anything in the plan about contacting or setting up a system to contact residents? I know you have like the media contact list, news, television, and newspaper. But I'm wondering if it would be in the interest of the village to set up like a Remind 101 or some sort of way in which people can opt into it.
So there's several systems within our systems, like the ones that are not listed. Catmar is ours, and they're in that response. There's like reverse 911s, and there's other things. I know that we are working on Text My Gov. So there's other things that we can add to the plan for sure.
Like just a blast.
When we have that one service. That
Yeah,
pay
tax
for.
gov that you're gonna
Text
be
gov.
talking about.
Yeah, and it has very few people attached to it right now.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is a living document, so if, you know, once we get that ironed out, we could include it in that process, somebody would have to be in charge of it. We do have Brian is listed as our, basically our information person, so he could share it. I mean, we would use every tool available to us. We also have a system called Nixle, which right now, I mean, for us, it's free. There are people signed up for it. There are better programs out there. I'm curious about text.my.gov because if text.my.gov works the way it says it works, we would probably do away with Nixle and use the same system everybody else is using, so it doesn't confuse people. So I'm kind of interested to see what we learn with that system, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's just a marketing.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem of getting people to sign up. The reverse 911 was great when everybody had a landline, because they could tell where your phone was and send it out. Now with everybody going to cell phones, they have no way of knowing what cell phone number.
There is some new stuff out there, so it's called Next Gen, and that will have some capabilities for text messaging people that sign up cell phones, because everybody's going to cell phones. So I mean, they'll be actually able to text dispatch and some up and coming things. This will grow and get better and better. It's definitely a lot better than when we were.
Jay, do you have a cell phone?
I have them, but I only use it when I'm hunting by myself or cutting wood. Otherwise, it's a paperweight.
Cell phones right lately in this area are just terrible.
Well, like I said, I'm so used to a landline.
Internet.
I know I'm old fashioned.
That's what they call it.
Is it rotary?
No.
I mean, you're gonna go big.
Yeah, I know. No, I want to say I appreciate the chief from doing this. It is so important to have something like this. Because you don't want to be bickering and figuring out things when you're in the middle of emergency. This way we pop it up, everybody knows their role and can start working on it right away. And really the important part of this is not so much the first 24 hours, because that's basically at emergency mode. It is the aftermath of coordinating everything. So this is outstanding. I think it's a really good document. The key will be that this needs to be yearly updated for sure, minimum of yearly. As you know, with all the changes and making sure people know their role. So when it happens, they can pull their slide up and say, yeah, I got to do this, 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 and this. So
There's a
very nicely done.
There's checklists, so.
Yeah.
So whoever gets there, they just simply, my plan is to put these in every one of the squad cars, so they'll be available along with, you know, with our maps and those kind of things, so there'll be binders. You know, it's kind of nice to have the internet, but if you have a flood like you guys had, that stuff, power lines go down, this way you have the paper version, pull it out, see it. So, and then we'll test it, we'll also work a couple tests and try to get it to work. So I'm excited, it's a good plan, and you know, it's like anything, if you put in some effort, it'll turn out good, and then we'll test it to see if it actually.
Hopefully it's Murphy's Law, you won't ever need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the beautiful part of it. Really good. All right, any other discussion on this? Okay,
Thanks for the time.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same. So move. Thank you, chief. Yeah. All right, next is discussion and possible action, village sidewalk policy, just to bring you up. And I'm going to apologize up front on this. We passed this in May with some conditions, if you remember, and it just kept getting farther and farther down my to-do list until I finally got it done. So what this is basically the policy that we approved with the conditions that were, which was a number of heavy photos of damages with descriptions, a way for people that have limited funds. There's a way of working that. And to be honest with you, the timing because I was neglected and not do it right away, it just so happened that our village attorney was doing one for Columbus, so I kind of just took the language from that. That was applicable to ours.
I didn't, when I was reading through it, I didn't see the section about, like, if you can't afford to replace or you reckon to replace or something.
Let me see, it was something where we used the IRS.
Sorry about that. Small little words.
I don't even. I thought it was.
Yeah.
It's on page 212, the village administrator may waive the cost for authorizing payment plan. The financial hardship using the IRS definition of financial hardship.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this presented.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say
Aye.
Aye, nay, whatever it is it nay or aye?
aye. Yeah.
Aye.
So 2 then?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. All right, number 9, discussion and possible action, village special event permit. I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know who took this one.
Yeah, I can just give a real quick summary. So towards the middle point, I believe, of summer, we kind of had a discussion about this as a board and decided to suspend collection of permit fees, special event permit fees, pending some additional studies by the village to determine the amount of collective time it's been taking from our respective departments and kind of making an assessment on whether or not the fee was warranted or whether the fee should be waived permanently for future special events. Unfortunately, we did not have many additional special events after that point. And there wasn't, from the feedback that we gathered from the department heads related to the 1 or 2, I think that we may have had, there was not much in the way of collected time invested into those events. Whereas the ones at the beginning of the year, Trout Days and Memorial Day barbecue, and there's a lot more overall time going into that from a department head perspective. So I was told we needed to bring it back for discussion at the beginning part of this year. I don't know if this is more or less just a time to say, do you want the study to continue longer into this year? Or do you want to resume collection of special event fees? This is more of a decision for you.
I think I was on the chamber board when this was brought up. I think their thought is it's a nonprofit, like we're trying to raise money and try to bring people in the village. So they didn't want to pay the $50, I think is what. That's
Oh, yeah, there's a number of lines.
right, the lines and all that. That's why it's here. Yeah.
Yeah, just to get the history, the problem with the village wanted the administrator was some organizations we were charging, some we were waiving. So we wanted to get some consistency. So the idea was to collect some data on the total, what the real cost of special events on city staff was. I don't remember it needing to come back now, but I guess you're asking, do we want to continue with collecting this, or are we going back to charging?
Yeah, I think just some guidance going into this new calendar year, since we're going to have applications coming forward very soon, whether or not you want us to enforce collecting the special event permit fees or do away with them, keep the study going longer, no collection.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, could we? I think we sort of decided to waive the fee, but try to figure out how much time went into it so we could figure out more information than we decided the last time. You're telling us there really hasn't been there hasn't been a lot of work, so if we just continue with the same waive the fee and let us know how much time goes into it. I mean, there might be one, I don't know, there might be one that comes in that takes hours of time. I mean, I don't know. How do you know?
Well, like, I think he's correct. Our bigger events are more in the spring than ours. So I would think on Trout Day and Memorial Parade, there's probably a lot more staff time and other things put into that. But I'm, like I say, I want to make it where it's consistent and it's in writing and it comes from here. I don't think the administrators should pick and choose which one get charged and how much. That's kind of the dilemma that's what brought it up, so. I'm good either way. Now, if we want to see what these next two, what the true cost is and then have it. Is that going to have an effect? I
Is
guess?
it gonna change our mind that the police went out and staked Park Street and it took them 2 hours?
Right.
I mean, does that matter to us for the Memorial Day parade? I mean.
I mean, there's
no,
certain things you're
doesn't.
never gonna get rid of, right? Like child days, and Memorial Day, you know, but
You don't want.
I think estimating like what it does cost for would be, I mean, we were taking, yeah.
That's where.
Okay, I have Doug, Cameron, and then Judy.
So I like the event permit process because it has the organizers thing. And if we're gonna use some municipal time and effort and money, they should be planning an event. We also want to avoid any kind of emergency situation. Or we know that country can be a bad place. We want to have some plans if we're gathering a huge amount of people. I think the event process is good. I want a fair and easy way to do it. And we want to encourage these kind of events because it brings people together and it brings people into our community and our businesses. For sure, the trout days, but we've added a few. Typically my event is done, on the Legion or Montagues or stuff. I don't typically use police staff or things like that, but I do think encouraging the events and encouraging partnering with us so that we can, like the public safety committee, so Chief Foley could give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I think part of that process is good to measure. I'm not as concerned about $50 or $100, but we're not going to gain a lot of revenue. And we want to encourage, these types of events.
Cameron?
On our last conversation, I think we were all agreed with that same sentiment that obviously we want to encourage these kind of events, but when you went out and looked at other communities like Middleton and stuff, they had like different costs for nonprofits versus or people who aren't nonprofits, and then like they had a whole, they had a bunch more stuff, and all of them, they were collecting quite a bit more money, kind of, I think, on all of them. So then we circled the drain a little bit, was like, okay, we obviously love Tribe Day, we obviously love the Memorial Day parade, but like, would we be okay with PI hosting a giant event that closed down the streets and, took a bunch of taxpayer dollars to do so? And no one really had an answer at that point. So I guess, given that, I think we should probably just delay collecting the $50 for another year and probably collect that data. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be in a spot where something like that is going to happen and we want to recoup some of the taxpayer dollars we're going to have to spend on it and then have no means to do so.
Judy, Andy, Cody.
I concur that we do want to know what's happening again, if World's Fair ever comes back. The police can look at it and say, here's where the beer garden can go, here's where the fencing can go. So I love the idea of the process and the application and tell us what's going on. I think that's very important that we all know what's going on. My only thing is if it is a nonprofit, I feel like $50 isn't going to make or break us. So I'd like to see that on hold. But when you said that, that just made me think of the big Iron Man. Do they pay for anything when they come through? They do, don't they?
They were.
So, but we suspended it for
We
now.
suspended
But then- Okay, I was just curious about that. I'm good with not having them. I'm okay with it.
Andy?
I think collect data, but I think that a fee over $50 is, maybe it's even a retainer that we give back to them. Because it then incentivizes them to promote it and do well and bring people to the village, right? It also holds them accountable for whatever financial money that they're gonna pay in that retainer if something happens. With the end result being that we can waive it at the end if they meet whatever qualifications. Ultimately, if PI wants to come before the board and have a private event, we would then make a decision if the cost benefit ratio, what it is. And to the last point, I would say, it's capitalism. Middleton's a market. There's demand to have events in Middleton. There's not demand to have events across place. That's why they can charge more.
Cody?
Well, I was gonna, kind of like what you said, I was thinking the same thing, but like the smaller events where we're not using police, like Memorial Day parade, if there's an emergency, the police officer can peel off and go tend to it. Whereas at like an Ironman, when they're working 2 or 3 different places at $40 an hour for 12 hours. That's like a high cost to the village. We're not, I mean, can we bill them for it?
Oh, that
Whereas
most,
Memorial Day.
yeah,
Parade-
Ironman usually pays for lawn.
But if you have a dozen large events here at $50 or $100, it's not gonna make up time for Parks and Rec moving tables. Village staff moving tables, porta potties, things of that nature, just $50 is kind of a. It would be $600 over the course of a year and a dozen events. I don't see charging $50 just to handle processing fees. But I do like the process of, so we know what's going on, they still have to apply for it. And then waive the fee or hold money in case they break picnic tables.
I guess my comment, I agree with being said probably at this time. It's not needed. I think we need to continue to look, because I think once the new village hall gets built and we have restrooms and parking, I think there's gonna be a lot of people wanting to put events down there on Xander Park, which is a location, and some of them will be, they may be nonprofit, but they're looking for profit. You know, Ironman is a nonprofit, but they certainly make money, right? They got paid staff and everything like that. So it's just something I think we should keep in mind, that it's potential at some point, we may have to get to a point where we do try to recoup some of the costs of village staff time.
Yeah, and then in that study, we should also probably try and contact local business owners and see, did you have a bump? What was the bump? You know, so that we can actually see what it is generating in revenue outside of just, you know, the fee potentially, and you know what. Yeah.
Any other comments on that? So I can't remember. Did we have a motion to keep it the same? Okay, do I have a motion? What I'm hearing is, do we have a motion to keep it at not charging the $50 and try to continue to collect the data on the special events for the rest of the year?
I would move to waive special event fees for the 2023 year and collect data. So we can make a better informed decision.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. So moved. All right, discussion and possible action, forming an economic development committee. I'll let Brian talk on this.
Okay, just a little background. This was one of the topics referenced with regard to what Jay had asked department heads to come up with ideas for revenue generation and cost savings and improvements throughout the village. This was just a recommendation that I had. I had heard that the village previously did have an economic development committee. I don't know the background on why exactly it ended, but I thought that this would be an area that could help me a little bit by gaining other viewpoints. There's not a lot of opportunities for decisions that I can get with the board for discussions outside of this room. And I think having some other opinions and some other feedback on things that the village might want to target for recruitment into the community, or areas that we could better utilize and develop. So I have some direction on what we're trying to achieve. I think it only benefit us. So this was just more or less for discussion and some thoughts. I know it would involve the likelihood of a trustee having to chair another committee, so that could be something that wants to be hashed out tonight. But I think all in all, with where we're going as a village and some of the opportunities for advancement here in the future, that this might be something that could benefit us all.
Yeah, Doug and then Judy.
The biggest comment I'd like to make is that I would really love village staff, administrator and the chamber to have a better partnership and co-chair or co-lead something like this. I think even with the events, the communication is not as good between those two bodies as they need to be. I think there's a lot of synergy and a lot of good things going on in both. And I think this is an opportunity maybe to not duplicate, and maybe they have a committee already working at the chamber. I just think this is an important thing for a village that wants to be touristy. Wants to bring people to spend time and money and effort in our businesses, also to enjoy the natural area. So I would love to see, get some input and some chamber input, maybe even co-chairing between the staff or a board member and the chamber.
Judy?
I was on it the last time and I loved it. We had, the chamber so it was the chamber, and then I think I might have been picked up the village board, and then we had Matt, I think was still on, was with us way back when we did it. And then it was, some other business owners, Mike Bressler, Jim Nunn, I can't remember who was all on it, and Nick. I think it was good. We came up with a lot of different ideas. But I think the reason it got kaput is because we could never get to the final, like we came up with a lot, but we just could never get to the finish line. But I think it would be great to recreate it with Cross Plains, the way it's moving, the direction is. A lot of the new houses and so forth. I think it'd be great.
All right, okay, me then Doug. As you know, I'm all for citizen committees and I think it's the way to go. I'm gonna be honest with you, it is very difficult to find people to sit on committees right now. I mean, I've got an opening in finance that's been easily 6 months. I put in, if you looked at if you read my part of the newsletter this last month, I put in a breakdown of all the committees and asking people to send me an email or call me if they had interest in it. And I got 0 responses. Every year I'm trying, I know staff helps, you guys send, but it has been becoming harder and harder to find people to sit on committees. So it's, and we're gonna add potentially the CDA, that's gonna add potentially 7 more. I have to go out. 3 of you, I believe, if I remember right, will be on that committee. So we're already looking to form a new committee. I'm just wondering if the timing is right for that. And if we go ahead with this, everybody's got to go out and try to help me find some people that'll be on it. I'm getting tapped out of twisted arms of people that I know. Cameron?
Yeah, I agree. I obviously think having an economic development would be amazing, but just with the CBA on the horizon, in both of them sounding like they might need similar specialty, do we need to learn more about the CBA before we commit to the economic development one?
Doug?
One of the big items I would like to just talk about, and I think it could, if we're gonna look at this, I don't think we should set it right now. I think we should investigate it, and I would like some partnership with the chamber. We have a ton of new residents coming into our village. We have the same volunteers doing everything. I can't get baseball coaches. I can't get people to help with the dugout club. Only time we're getting people to show up to our meetings is when they're mad, when they're upset about an ATV route, when they're upset about a sewer bill. And to me, that's a problem with our community. Okay, we have a lot of events and a lot of things going on, and we see a lot of negative comments on social media. Okay, but we do not see people engage. And part of it could be adopt a friend to bring to a meeting, make something fun. Maybe this could be a pilot to do something outside the box. I can tell you, I get asked to do a lot of things. I'm planning to have this be my last term on the village board because I get tired. And everyone here in this sitting here does the same stuff. And in addition to our village board responsibilities, we're engaged in a lot of other things within our community. And I think it's something that Cross Plains was smaller. It seemed like there was more engagement. I know some of it's COVID. I know some of it's social media and phones, which Jay doesn't get engaged in. But there's a real, I think, miss from people engaging and giving of some of their time and effort, and only engaging when they're upset about something. I can tell you that is a challenge when you go out and do things, whether it's on a village board or serving as a baseball coach or running an event, everybody has their opinion on what you should have, would have, could have done different. And I feel like sometimes we beat up people who bring these ideas and do this extra work, it gets hard for them. But what we should be trying to do is find ways to make it fun and engaging, like you could, you know, the cool stuff. I love the visioning idea. I'd love to get the Stingrays more involved in raising some money and engaging some stuff. But it's 3 months a year and everyone's busy. Everyone's busy with their kids, their jobs and all that stuff. So I think adding another committee, but just really having a mission or like, let's have an engagement committee, helping me engage people in our village. So we're not a veteran community, so it's not the same darn people doing everything. And I didn't mean to go on a rant, but you know, it was a perfect opportunity to do it, because you know, I sit back, I sometimes get beat up to do extra things. And I would like to see people at a meeting for stuff, because I'm really tired of seeing people only show up when they're against something. Thank you.
Now, Andy, then Cody.
No, he read my mind. Engagement committee is literally what I was gonna talk about. I mean, I think we're not operating in the 21st century as a board. We're not engaging our community in the way we should be engaging them where they are. And like the future residents of our community, right? The future trustees of the community. We're not bringing them into the decision process. We're hearing from the loudest squeaky wheels and we're listening to them on a daily basis instead of trying to actually use the tools at our disposal to collect data and make decisions in a better informed way. That being said, I think that I would agree with the partnership between the Chamber of Commerce and whatever committee ends up being developed as an ad hoc. I also am wary of assigning more village trustees to more committees as somebody who's currently on 2. It was definitely a lot. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, Cody, then Judy.
I want to say on a second what Doug said about engagement, and I do actually, it sounds kind of silly, but I'd rather see a community engagement or an enhancement committee prior to an economic development, because people all think that's just the business owners are doing this, so they're getting their ways. No, come on in, come to a meeting, see what's going on, and then form your thoughts and basis and be active within the community, because with the pool visioning stuff, we're trying what we can. And I mean, it's only so much 7 people can do, but if you got more community engagement, just like the events, I see you working them, Doug working them, I'm there, people are attending them and they'll enjoy them, but they'll be the first one to bash them. They should have done this, they should have done that. Well, come on in, volunteer some time. We're all busy too. But I'd also like to say that the committee for the CDA would take precedence over any type of economic development. Because if you have 7 smart people who know finance, I'd rather see them on something that could drastically change this village for the next 30 years over something that you're putting the effort in but not getting anywhere.
All right, Judy, then Andy.
I like the engagement versus economics. To me, it's kind of hand in hand. If we get people in here, it's gonna help our economics. Off the top of my head real fast, the names that I came up with, don't live in our village, but very invested in our village. Todd and Casey Peterson, they just showed that they're very involved by buying 2 properties in our town. Mike Larson, he's bought a ton of properties in our town. I think we do need to go to these people and say, what else would you like to do in our town? I mean, they pay a ton of taxes in our town. They don't live here, but they're invested in their town. They are very invested in their town. Even
Can I just interrupt on that? If we're gonna do that, then you gotta change ordinance, because ordinance states that it has to be resident. Now, we can,
because Jim Nunn was on ours always, and he's never lived in our town.
well, you were an ad hoc, I believe. don't
Okay,
think you
okay,
were
this could be an ad hoc.
Property owner.
Yeah.
Well, no, I agree with it. I'm just telling you, if you make it
I would like township involved.
Yeah,
Maybe the.
just, all I'm pointing out is if it's an official committee of the village, then it has to be resident by our ordinance.
yeah, then I would do an ad hoc. Then I do whatever it is, because really these business owners, Dean and Jim Nunn, I was even thinking like Piggly Wiggly, none of them live in our village,
Yeah.
but they do have a vested interest in our village. We need to get them involved more. really, I think we did. Okay, that's it.
All right, Andy.
Oh,
Oh,
let's
I'm
just say
sorry.
one other thing, as far as meetings go, I think it also depends on when you have them. If they're day ones, like maybe over lunch hours versus nights, because chamber used to meet a lot of times during the day, noon to 1 or whatever else, and people came and ate their lunch and it worked out better, I think. I think we had better turnout for some of our meetings than night times, because they don't want to be away from their kids, or kids that got hockey ball, whatever it is. I think like lunch hours, depending on the age, it can work, especially for a lot of those business people.
Andy?
Yeah, I'm just always wary of the slippery slope of, bending, what we do to those who can afford to buy massive properties in the village. I understand the symbiotic relationship there. But that. It doesn't feel right to me. What I would say is that we could probably put some of the objectives of this ad hoc committee onto the enhancement committee, which is the second part of the finance advisory enhancement committee. Is that they could also be, instead of doing research on how much money we can save, you know, in nickels and dimes on different ordinances, the way in which we bill for certain things, they could do their research on trying to advocate and bring in opportunities for the village. I think would be another way to go about that without having to start a whole entire new committee to do the same thing.
Okay. So. I think this is good discussion. I guess I'm trying to figure out what you guys want to do for next step.
How about we think about it and bring back a proposal or an ideas for the next meeting?
Okay,
Because I have a lot of more thoughts
okay,
that I don't want to share out loud.
okay, all right. Fair. So that's what we'll do. We'll plan on bringing this back in February, give it some thought. I think there was great discussion. I heard actually the direction that way, in engagement committee. I'm not sure how that would look or how it was, and then there's clearly the possibility of booking this, depending on what it is, into a committee that we already have. I think those are all viable and ones that should probably be looked at a little bit more.
We might have more info on the CDA at
Yeah.
that time to share as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that seem good to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So discussion and possible action, changing the village sustainability committee from an ad hoc committee to a standing village committee starting April of this year. This is, I put this on because just to give the history, it was basically started off as an informal group. It was just citizens that got together over sustainability and wanted to move that into the realm of village government. We then moved them up to ad hoc committee, I believe in 2020. Because I think the first year they were just the formal, and then we moved them up to informal so we could, formal so we could put a trustee there so they had a link to the board, a more direct link. I think the work that they have done and sustainability is not going away ever. I think it is a critical committee that we should probably add as a standing committee. I think they have proven their worth and what they've produced for us, and I think it's only going to continue as we move through the years. So that's what this is. It's looking to take the status of ad hoc and having them become a permanent committee within our committee system.
I would move to approve, moving the village sustainability committee from ad hoc to a standing village committee.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, I have a motion and a second discussion.
The sustainability committee was, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
was very excited about, and both excited and apprehensive about it, because they now know that if this takes place, there will be a village trustee that will be assigned to facilitate the agendas and meetings. And they were concerned about, you know, what the prospects of the future means for whether or not there are trustees that align well with the goals of the sustainability committee into the future. So that's something that we discussed at our last meeting. They're also a little bit apprehensive about the change in the same vein, due to the fact that there has not been a lot of action from the board related to the objectives and recommendations that the sustainability committee has made up to this point outside of approving the comprehensive plan. So those are the messages that I've received from the sustainability committee. Based on our conversations around this, knowing that it's coming out on the agenda.
All right, thank you. Cameron?
What was the sources, just a curiosity thing of the chickens and ducks then? I thought that came from the sustainability, I mean, it came up through the plan.
They put us through obviously zoning and plan,
Right.
but they certainly gave our input.
Right, that's okay,
Yeah.
I just, so there's probably a little bit, well, I don't know how much more, but.
And the waste stuff.
Yeah, so to just clarify, before I was put on sustainability, that was an issue that I brought before the planning commission, separate of sustainability, but it was in line with the sustainability plan. So as I was transferred over to sustainability, that's kind of when that transition happened, generally speaking.
And I guess I would have to, I don't have their plan memorized with the 25 points, but I think we've worked on some of the points, or at least used them within the discussion. I just can't remember what all the 25 points were.
That's a lot of points, no doubt.
Yeah, right, yeah, so, I think, I guess all committees could feel that way, right? And, sometimes we try to match people's, I try to make it what's good, but I think committees, that's the whole idea, is to get input from citizens, and then the trustee is the one that brings it to the board. So I'm not so worried that the trustee is gonna change the direction of the sustainability, because that's their committees,
Yeah, and this is.
I think staff plays a bigger role than trustees.
We can-
Well, I don't know, like I say,
Yeah, I think this is less about, whether sustainability should become a standing committee than it is about what is the role of committees, generally speaking.
oh, gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I think that the last discussion we just had about the economic financial future committee, or whatever we're gonna call it, is that people maybe don't want to volunteer for committees because they don't feel like they're truly making a difference in general, because committees are not being listened to by the board. And to say that whoever chairs a committee does not have control over the agenda of the committee is false to say, just as you control exactly what gets on the agenda here for the board of trustees.
Well, there's rules around both.
Yeah.
The board members here or two committee members there, want to put something on the agenda, it has to go on the agenda.
Well, unfortunately, that's not always adhered to,
I-
nor is the ordinance that it has to be done within 10 days.
If you're talking about ours, yes, you're right. There are rules that we have to follow, but I don't want to get into that. That's not, huh?
But they're not always followed. Are you telling me that you've never added anything to the agenda within 10 days of a meeting?
But the ordinance says that's my job to do that. So absolutely. So has Brian. It's when you have two other people that it bypasses the process where there needs to be the 10-day notification written.
So you could add anything whenever you
Yes.
want.
Yes. That is correct. And so Brian can too. Now, we talk to each other, so we have things ready to go here, but you're correct. Just like tonight, we added, you saw the difference between the preliminary and the final. We didn't know that we were gonna get the bill, but we have to pay that bill, or you end up paying a penalty because our next meeting is more than 30 days away. So yes, that gets on the board without the 10-day notice, absolutely. But that's within the rules.
Okay.
We're missing the future agenda items too, that's like supposed to be like a key, we're supposed to have it on every committee.
Right.
And this
Right.
board, and that's supposed to be kind of a key place where two board members would be like, no, this thing has to be.
Yeah.
On an agenda.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. So we have a motion, we kind of get off on
Oh,
sustainability.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. So, any other discussion on moving sustainability to a permanent, village committee?
So I just have a question concerning that. So then moving it to a permanent committee inside of our ordinances, we have boards, commissions, committees, and by doing this, then does the board member who's appointed to that committee become the chair? Because it doesn't read like it has to. Inside of the something, you could actually have the chair be appointed.
I thought it said that trustee was the chair.
No, I haven't read the whole thing, but reading these individual ones, like for Parks and Rec, it specifically says the board member is the chair. I mean. That's my question, like, when we make it a formal committee, do we have to have the board member be the chair when we're gonna change this ordinance?
I'm not sure.
Unless that's-
Well, I'll have to reread it. I thought it said up on top. I'll reread it, but my feeling is that the trustees should be the chair. They're the ones that bring things back to the board.
I understand.
It's keep it simple that you know when you're whatever committee on, you're becoming the chair. I'd have to look at the exact wording on it.
Right, I understand. So then, we're voting to say yes to this, but something's formally gonna have to come back.
Oh,
Or
well, yeah, because when this happens, again, if you read the ordinance. 2 of the members will be a 3-year term, 1 member will be a 2-year term, and 1 member will be a 1-year term for the first cycle.
Right.
Then you get into it. So we'll have to do seats and do that. Right now, everybody's on a 1-year, so and we have to obviously. Make a change to the ordinance. If it comes a committee, it's got to be incorporated into the ordinance. Andy.
Melissa Gavin is amazing. John Brandt and Steve are amazing. So is Kevin. It's been a delight serving with them. They do a phenomenal job.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like I say, I'm all for this. I was for making them formal when they were an informal committee.
Sure.
And so I've been a backer of this committee forever. So.
I just had to feel heard, Jay, and I feel heard now, buddy.
Okay.
It's just the chair.
Committees can pay,
I don't
and
know.
not that I care, because it's a
At
dollar.
one time,
I'm just
we had that. I have not checked.
I'm
Or,
with plan commission.
oh, just,
Only the commissions are paid, which is only plan commission.
well, there's the police commission.
One of my plans paid, it was $10 a month if you're.
I
I don't know.
A quarter an hour, but I was just curious.
All right, I have a motion and we're good. So let's just take a vote. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, the same. So moved. All right, thank you.
A note on the planning commission getting paid, they have to by Wisconsin state law
Oh,
to
okay.
prevent bribery.
Oh,
Something,
wow.
I'm not really sure.
He added that $10. It's gonna do it.
I'm just saying that $10 goes a long way.
All right, the next one is, as I mentioned, discussion village budget governance and definitions. This is gonna be, we'll be talking about budget at every meeting. This is the first one. This is just building the foundation. So as we move through and build the rest of it, it'll have an understanding. So the first part of it is the budget information sheet was everything. These first 3 are governance. The state statute is right there. It basically gives us a requirement and the authority to put the budget together and make modification to it. Village ordinance 7.01. Basically, the bulk of that is has an overall process, but it also tells basically Bobby what has to be shown and included in the budget. The village budget policy 2021 states the detailed budget process and timelines. And that's what we kind of go over every year. We kind of have been following that. So those are the governances that kind of cover the budget. So then what's important is us all having the same understanding of some of the terms that we will need to know as we move through and do some of the other sections. And I'll let Bobby cover that because you can tell she's much fancier than I am with working a computer. So go ahead, Bobby.
It's gonna be a long meeting and get some fun at the end here. So these are just a list of terms that Jay and I decided to, give you guys definitions for in case you didn't know. The capital budget versus operating budget. Obviously, capital is big ticket items that last a long time, equipment, your road projects, parks. And we generally pay with those with issuing debt, grant funds, not the tax levy. Whereas the operating budget is financed by the tax levy, it's personnel and everyday operating costs. It's also with state funding, user fees, miscellaneous revenues. And then, so just breaking down personnel costs are wages and benefits. Wages are, money that we pay our employees for their labor. Benefits is your health insurance, pension, Social Security, Medicare. If there's any questions, you guys can stop me. Go a little slower. Next page, inflation, the general increase in prices in the fall and the purchasing power money. The official inflation rate is tracked by calculating changes in the CPI. And a cost of living adjustment is the increase in wages and benefits based on the CPI. The next terms are equalized value versus assessed value. Individual parcels of property are valued by the local assessor, while the estimated value of the taxable property is the equalized value, and that's determined by the Department of Revenue. So the equalized value again is your market value, and your assessed value is just what we use to determine how much you pay in your taxes. So they theoretically should be the same. They rarely are. That's why we do the reevaluation every so often, is to try to get them more aligned. That way your property taxes are based on more your market value, your home. So they are different, but in a perfect world, they'd be the same. Our next term is the mill rate, which is also the tax rate. It's just the amount of tax payable per dollar of your assessed value. So I did our example here on overall levy. Divided by our assessed value divided by our 1,000, give us the $8.62 for this year. And then of course the tax levy is just how much we put on our property owners here to fund our services and programs. Which costs to run the village. And then the big term we really want to focus on this year, kind of as we're talking about things, is our levy limit. The maximum amount a municipality can implement as a tax levy. We're allowed to increase this over what we levied the prior year by the percentage increase in equalized value from net new construction. Net new construction is just new homes and stuff that come in. Less any demolition. We usually don't have a lot of stuff we're taking off. If there's a fire or something, it'll come off of there. The only thing is the levy limit does not apply to debt service payments on our geo debt. So we're always allowed to levy for our debt payments. So that's never an issue. And then again, I just gave our example from our budget we just passed. Tried to make it as straightforward as I could.
That's
It's a
good.
little complicated. Yeah,
I have a couple of questions.
absolutely.
Okay, levy limit does not apply to debt service payments. And then, well, I guess, so we take on debt. And we have to pay that debt. Does that just mean that, like, you will have to, at a minimum, collect enough property tax money to pay that debt, and so it doesn't count against the levy limit?
Right, yeah.
Okay,
So if we decided to take out as much debt as we were legally allowed to, we could tax for that payment.
got it. Well, we look at.
Even though it increased, say, 50% tax increase, we would be allowed to because we have to make our payment.
Okay, so then just a clarifying point on I think the first one, the capital budget, then. So we don't pay that with taxpayer, it's debt, but ultimately it is taxpayer dollars, because then we have to.
Yes.
We have to pay that off and payments, okay. And then final question, maybe you're gonna cover this one, is the levy limit example you have. I'm just curious more than anything about the prior year debt service adjustment, like what goes into figuring that out, and then the current year debt debt service adjustment.
Like our loan payments.
That's sort of loans and principal, we have to pay. Pay for money that we borrowed.
So I'll do it kind of backwards.
Per year.
The current year debt service adjustment is if we. That's our total amount in our debt service budget for expenditures. So if we had to levy for every penny, that's the maximum.
So that isn't necessarily what we have. This is just your max.
That's the max.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry, the bottom number,
The
Yep, the current year,
okay.
So
So that's
what
the
we
max
do-
we're allowed to,
right?
okay.
So, because we had the 88,000, if you scroll down a little. So. Next year, the prior year debt service adjustment won't be a negative 1,010,000. It'll be the 1,010,000 minus the 88,000. If we really complicated. And this is like,
This was the only, I mean, this one was like the major, I was like looking through this and I was like, okay, I do not understand how these are calculated. I would love to learn more about it, but if there's gonna be more of these wonderful
No.
PowerPoints coming later.
Yeah, there will be, and this one we'll spend more time on later on. We just wanted to get the term out there so you didn't see it the very first time.
You're not alone.
No,
I
yeah,
was having the same questions and you said it, I'm like, okay.
the terms are great, it's just then I got to this one, I was just like, wait a second. I don't know how these numbers came about. So,
Well, we'll definitely be, that'll be coming up.
awesome.
Yep,
Thanks.
good, Judy.
Bobby, that's awesome. So thank you. And I hope the next, well, there's one on tip too, right? Coming up. That we all learn about that.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
But one thing is, it's here, and one of the reasons we're talking about this is to increase transparency. So I just have a quick question that has to do with tonight's agenda. And I would have asked sooner, but remember I was the one I couldn't get on my computer for the new updated agenda. For like number 3 for the consent calendar and number 9, and you pulled out number 9.
Yeah.
They do have to do with wages. Do we normally put them in a consent? Because I always thought we always talked about them, those kind of things during the board.
Well, you can. That,
I don't ever remember putting those in the consent.
Like
Like when it has to do with wages.
But they're just posting.
No,
Oh,
because-
no, that one, yeah, it was complete. The hiring was done. We generally. Well, we do put them on consent, like when we hire people, that is usually in the consent agenda. And the same thing when we post, we usually have it in the consent.
no,
But you should feel comfortable. I pulled off number 9 because I think it goes a little bit past just the posting. So that's why I pulled that one off. But you should always feel free to do that if you.
I don't think they
Question.
should ever be in the consent. I think that should be a board, when we're talking wages, I think that should always be in the board. I don't ever remember that being.
Well, okay, we posted it for 10,000 and you
Right.
approved that position for 10,000,
Right,
right?
right.
So did you want to brought it back to have a discussion on once we hire someone if 10,000 is? So I guess I'm trying to follow the logic.
Didn't know why we did it, because usually we did bring it back, but you did bring it back because it was less than what we approved. That was your logic. But this next one is more, it's an increase.
No, well, the 9,
Yeah.
that's, I pulled that, yes, you're correct. I pulled
But
that.
that should have never, in my mind, should have ever been in the consent.
It was on the consent because I thought it was just going to be the posting of the position at the current rate.
Okay.
And I think that's what we're doing. I agree with you. Once that second part was put in, I felt we need to clarify that, because you're right, that shouldn't be decided tonight, but that's the next item, so we'll talk about
So
it.
had it been at the current rate. I
Yes,
wouldn't have pulled it.
no, because it's asking you, because I'm asking you to fill the position.
Right.
And that's why with Becky's, we had that at the last one, well, one of the meetings to fill that position.
Yes, and we approved that.
And we proved that, so that's the logic why I didn't
Okay.
bring it back, because we usually don't do that. We want to know who got hired,
Right.
but we don't renegotiate the cost.
It was less.
Unless we need to, like.
Yeah.
The crossing guard.
Yeah, right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Because I certainly wasn't trying to pull any fast ones. All right, are we good with this? Any more questions for Bobby or I? All right, so then we're gonna go back to number 9. And the reason I pulled that is the posting to replace the position, I think is fine, but then there was the second part of it talking about in 2024 of a raise of basically $9,000. I believe, just to make sure there's no confusion, that should be part of it, should be part of the discussion of the 2024 budget. I don't think we want to hire someone with their impression that they're going to get a $9,000 raise the next year. So, and I'm not sure if that was the intent, but I'm comfortable and want approval to fill the position. But the whole part about raising it to 9,000 to me should not be part of the motion. That should be discussed during the 2024 budget process.
And I'm totally in agreement. So do we need a?
We need what I'd like to see is a motion, so it's real clear, the motion is to hire a Parks and Recreation coordinator at the current rate.
I will make a motion to post for a new Village Parks and Recreation Coordinator at the current rate.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, I have a motion and a second, open up for discussion. Andy?
Yeah, I just want to hear the logic and reasoning for the request from Mr. Erickson.
Yeah, it's.
So
It's in consent agenda.
understandable, Jay, obviously, I did talk with Jay about this on Friday. The recreation coordinator position, was hired 9 years ago. In 9 years, that position has evolved quite considerably to be more than just running day-to-day programs for kids. It has evolved into more of a supervisor type role where you are supervising part-time staff, we're supervising some full-time staff. It's evolved to be more than just a coordinator position. And with the current person leaving, the main reason is obviously money. There's been so many salary studies done in the last 3 months, just in Dane County. Every recreation coordinator without experience is making more. So my plan was what I really wanted to do tonight was come to you with a change in the job description and show you how we can do it without increasing taxes. Just by doing it with the fees and programs that have currently been offered over the last 9 years. Following discussion with Jay on Friday, I completely agreed with the way that he brought it up and saying that that's not just fair to all the other employees and or departments, and I agree with him about that. He's right. But I wanted to make sure that when I go out to try and find somebody with both recreational and aquatics experience, that I'm being transparent with them as well about what the needs are of the village and or our department and our expectations within that position. So I don't find it, I found that obviously the person in that position, we've been trying to change that job title, job description for the last at least 4 years. Obviously based on the duties that she had been doing for our department, and that hadn't been completed. And we continue to go down that same role of trying to make changes within people's job titles and categories and where they're at and pay. And I thought this would be a good time to try and represent the pay and or job title of what that position is, the need within the village.
It's a good time, in my opinion, to make this change before you hire somebody else. I mean, like, if you're gonna do it, now's the time.
Well, here's the thing, I think it sets a bad precedent. We will be doing the 2024 budget this whole year then. And I don't think that's the proper way. While he may be able to come up with $9,000 more for Parks and Rec, there may be a need somewhere else for that money than this position. I don't think we should be taking and making 2024 budget decisions in January of 2023. I think we have a process. And I think everybody agreed that it works very, very well. I think we're gonna have to set priorities at some point. And right now, you saw right there with the current levy limit, we have $88,000. So if you would go ahead with it, we're spending over 10% of what we have left in this for this position without looking at all the other needs of the department. We should not get into the process of taking and making a 2024 budget by individuals. And I just don't think it's fair to the rest of staff because they don't have an opportunity to try to bump them up. There may be other employees that feel the exact same way, that their jobs have changed and they should have an increase. And are we willing to look at each one of these and actually put a 2024 budget together in January, February? I don't see the need for this. My suggestion to him is go out and fill it. And if he can't, and he needs to come back and we need to talk about it, or he puts that in with the other supplements that other department heads may have on their needs for increase in salary. So I disagree that this is not the time to do it, and we have to be fair to everybody.
It could be fair to just post it at 54 instead of doing that for 2024. Just post it as 54 off the bat so we get a high quality candidate.
But how do you know you're not going to get a high quality candidate at 45?
I trust staff's recommendations, that this is what the appropriate salary is.
What happens if the other lady would have stayed for $54 if we're willing to pay that now?
Well, yeah, she has the option to do so.
Why?
Do you think she would?
She's already accepted a job, my understanding.
But Jerry,
I've seen that happen a million times.
but what about Jerry's? He's doing he's posting also. So what happens if he comes to us and says, well, I'm posting, but now I want to give this guy another $7,000 or 8 or whatever.
And do you have any data in front of you of comparing job descriptions or looked at any of these studies that have been done?
No, I trust that.
There's no, it has nothing to do with trust. It has to do with data. So we can have
Do you have
data.
any data to present to me?
No, I don't, because I don't think it should be done.
But we had data when we updated the pay rates. We
Yeah.
Just recently did them,
We did.
third and fourth quarter. I recruit, hire and train people for a living. Whenever a manager leaves, moves to somebody that want to pay people more, and I don't disagree, our times are challenging. But the fair way to do it is to always do it in market rates, which we move forward our wages for our valued and very important staff. I hate to lose Andrea, I think she was awesome for our village. But I think we have to have a process for it. And unfortunately, we only have a certain amount of money to spend for as our taxpayers and as ourselves. So, we've made adjustments, we've raised the levels, and I think that's kind of the annual process that most businesses follow too. Because they'll have a time of the year for budgeting, they will put in what they need, what they expect their needs are. There are certainly variations to that, where we have a process for amendments and adjustments. So most places would post it as was budgeted. And then when a manager has a challenge, they go to their boss or the board and try to have it adjusted.
We're also forgetting that we just authorized Jim Non and his friends to raise whatever money they want to build a facility that then will be handed over to Parks and Rec to manage. And so whoever fills this position is going to have an astronomically larger job on top of whatever they get hired for at 48.
Well, I would certainly hope that a part of that would fund more staff and better staff. It's a $2.5 million gift for our village.
I'm not arguing against the gift. I'm saying that the responsibilities of whoever gets hired is going to extrapolate with the people that are.
Yeah,
But there's to raise.
And I think we have a history of that. When the chief took on emergency management, we bumped his salary. Now Becky is taking on the court position and we're bumping her salary. So when those tasks come on, I'm all for that, and we have a history of doing that. But we aren't doing that right now. What we're being asked is to adjust something that we don't have, that probably you could look with a lot of our employees aren't meeting the standards compared to other communities. And we're working on that. We've slowly been trying to bring salaries up. I just don't think it's fair to give someone, what are we talking about? That's over a 10%. We're almost at a 18% raise.
You're not giving anybody an 18% raise. You're offering the market rate for a quality candidate to fill a job that we want and that we value in this community.
All right.
So she's also recreations and aquatic supervisor position. Like if you're not unable to fill that, how is that gonna affect the pool this summer?
So that's,
Not having a supervisor at the pool.
so this is where I'm at. So what you approved or what you wanted to approve was recreation coordinator. That's a current position. So I would be changing the job description back to what it was 9 years ago, or I'll say 6, because we did update it since then. And so if that's what you approve, then providing, I'm not gonna put out the aquatics part of it at all. So now we're gonna be even thinner in regards to that. Like we have all new pool management coming in this year. So Andrea had taken on those tasks in hopes of obviously, she took on more than what was in her job description, thinking that would help her get more pay. And it may or may not have. I don't know if that directly correlated with how she got more. She got the same percentage as everybody else, so it didn't necessarily get more. And there are other people that do the same. I'm not saying that there aren't. What I'm trying to say is this is the time that I can make a change to it. And I didn't ask for it for this year, but I did request that this be a discussion point. So I'm glad you took it off for us to talk about. But I think you're gonna be surprised, really surprised, and maybe you won't, but really surprised in regards to what communities are doing for their employees currently. If you look up and what Sun Prairie did on last Friday, they gave $40,000 to some of their employees, Jay. Like they're looking at 35% increases everywhere. People making $100,000 already. So because they value what these people are doing, and I'm not saying that you don't value it, but when we keep bringing these same job descriptions or these same types of hopes and changes at budget time and nothing gets done and we're not given the right direction, I guess that makes me at a time like this say, I have an opportunity to make that change.
Did you bring it to this budget process for 2023?
What's that?
For to increase her salary?
No, because we weren't given the option to do so.
Also,
You
this
you
job
always
description-
have that option to do it.
We
No,
always had that.
Mike, come on.
How do you say that? And not one person brought a job description change or pay increase for one of their employees, knowing that that was a high priority list for the entire community.
Well, we did. One is that we made adjustments and merged it. Well, I don't want to get it because we're going off subject. But the budget process had it. Anybody can put any supplement in. There's no restrictions on supplements for the budget process. So, and I thought, I can't remember which ones came up. I think the grant writer was one and maybe the sick leave, whatever. But anyways, we're at we need to stay focused right now is the motion on the table is to open up the, for you to post the position that's being vacated and filling it at the current rate. That's where we're at. If Andy wants to make a motion or someone wants to make a motion different to amend that, that's fine, but I think we need to move up. I don't want to get into talking about budget process in January that we just finished.
Yeah, it's not a budget process question, in my opinion. It's a vacated position. Someone resigned. We need to post the position at a competitive rate to other municipalities in Dane County. And we're trying to fill it with the best person we can. And so by raising the salary, that is what we're doing. It's nothing to do with changing the budget as far as outside of the fact that we're gonna offer a different salary, right? This wouldn't have been part of the discussion for 2023 because the position was filled at that time. You understand?
Oh, I understand, but I don't understand why. I don't understand why we have to make the decision for 2024 and why it can't wait till September and do the same thing. That's where I'm coming from on it. Because he's not asking to post it at 54. We're posting it at 45 and then adding 9,000 in 2024.
Yeah, I would.
So that's what the request was.
Yeah.
And I'm saying we don't need to deal with the raise in 2024. We need to deal in getting the position posted.
Great, I would recommend we fill it with the $54,000 starting salary then, instead of the.
All right, so your motion is to change it, to increase the pay, change it from the current rate to 54,000.
Upon hiring, yeah.
All right, do I have a second to that?
No, we already have a motion.
No, he's trying to amend it.
Oh.
So do I have a second to that?
I'll second it.
All right, so now what we're gonna discuss is if it should be amended from the current salary or jump up to 54,000.
I can't support that without data. So there needs to be a job description. The person needs to show that they're demonstrating a $10,000 increase. I think that's a bad thing to do to Andrea, who has done extra work.
So
I'm talking about a process that I've used in private business and industry forever, where the job descriptions have value. And if we're missing something as a board, if we're missing something big as a board, because I thought we've adjusted wages a couple times recently. And if we haven't done it correctly, then we need the data and information to show that. I value our employees. I want them to feel good about the work they do. But it's when somebody leaves, it's always knee jerk to want to raise wages, and it's a competitive, tough market. I get beat up every day by Costco and Braver for not having every road show I need because I can't find people for $20 an hour. And it's just, it's the way of the world right now, but then I need to justify and show their additional responsibilities, or I need to justify and show the market rate shows that that job is there. And I'm all for Andrea and think she's done a wonderful job. And I believe in Parks and Rec a ton. I just need the data to make a fair decision.
All right, Cameron?
I agree with the data. And Mike, I think you mentioned that you tried to get a raise for her for 4 years. And then just, could you like outline what happened there? Because that would be the, like, look, the job was here, now it's here.
Never
Like that.
got, yeah, it just never came to this point. It said it would, for the most part, it's always been something that we're going to do as a community as a whole, which we received during budget time and other documents that, you know, I think Bill had put together. I think Caitlin put it together before that. It's never come to fruition.
Okay. And then I guess to Jay's point, anyone can ask for amendments on the budget. Is that true for department heads too? They can.
Yes.
Yeah, they can. Okay.
If you read the process, I generally, and we're gonna do this as a group, generally I give them a base budget increase. So then they can do whatever they want with that percentage. Anything over that, they do a supplement request. And then this year, even in 2023, we took the lump sum of a 3% chunk plus merit pay, and then the 3% of wage, and they had some input on how they wanted it divided up. So what we ended up doing, if you remember, is people who received merit pay in 2022, that was put into their base salary for 2023. We gave people who were not in that category a 4% raise.
I remember all that.
And then 2022, we took the lower people and took half of the merit pay there to bump them up.
So then how does a promotion work? If I felt that a person is doing something, you know, above and beyond what they originally hired for and the title would change.
What the system is, we have a grade system 1 through 10. Unfortunately, what's not in the grade system are the benchmarks for it, but each grade has a range that is 40%. So they have, if some employee would like to stay where they're at, there's still that range where they can increase and stay at that grade. And then the grade should have benchmarks where you hit benchmarks, then you move up into the grade, which is a different range. But generally the ranges cover within 3 grades. So if you're in range 2, you can make as much as someone in range 4. You're just at a different part of that range. All right, Cody,
So, but
then, Doug.
so originally the request is to, like, he's trying to change this person into a supervisor role, which. What's that?
She already is, right?
She's, no, her
Not
job
by-
title was coordinator.
Not by job title, so she'd be a supervisor in management of an aquatics center, correct? So,
Well, that's what his plan was. It doesn't have to be that way.
I mean, do you need a full-time aquatics supervisor
Yes,
to manage 15, 20
30
employees,
staff
30 staff?
plus recreation staff and a full day camp of 30 plus kids. I mean, it's the whole, what I'm getting at, and I completely agree with you, Doug. My original plan with this was to bring the old job description, the new job description, and have you guys actually have that, the first discussion point. And then the second part was going to be of the hiring of the position, whatever job description is approved, right? That, it didn't happen that way, so my plan was to go with it with the supervisor job description at the current rate as we had discussed on Friday. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with us trying to start that way and go that route. And my whole thing of putting this second part on here was just so that the board and myself and whoever I'm hiring understands that my hope and plan is for this position to be at the, 50th percentile, or maybe a little higher than that in regards to Dane County's supervisor roles. And so,
The biggest thing I want to add is this really isn't that much different from private business and industry. When you apply for a job, there's a starting wage and there's a range. And there's a list of responsibilities. When you do extra work and that job evolves, many of us have done extra work for a lot of years in the private sector as well. And you do that in hope that you'll be rewarded by that person or that entity. So I think we have to get the reality of the job responsibilities and what we're doing aligned into the right places. And to me, that's a process that takes more than one meeting. It's always knee-jerk when someone leaves, well, they would have left if they had more money. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes it's job satisfaction, sometimes it's different thing. But as an organization, the village or Made in the Shade, Blinds and More, or Braver, they have these ranges and wages and skill sets, and they're supposed to fit in there. And I know they don't always do it, but as an overseer, or I like to think about more as a board, as overseers, we want it to be fair and equitable and making knee-jerk decisions. And I don't have data ranges. That's why I'm personally not gonna go ahead. I want to give Mike what he brought to the board to approve tonight. And then I want to work with him and encourage him to get it right, because I want that in the center to be successful. I want our kids to have a good life that leads to satisfaction, like fun community.
Well, what if we authorize up to, like, what if we just approve the range? And then
No,
that
because
decision.
then you're doing a conflict in range. We already have the ranges. And they're gonna go, if you say you can do it from 45 to 54, it's gonna be 54. Because we have to make that call, not on the fly.
I say good.
Okay, so I think we're gonna take the vote on the first, the amendment, which is to move the salary up from 45,300 to 54,000. I believe the numbers were, if I'm correct. So roll call vote. So just so people know, a yes vote means you're moving it up, a no vote means we go back to the original amendment. Or motion, I'm sorry.
Trustee Paul Mikowski,
No,
trustee Hartman,
Yes.
trustee Brooklyn,
No,
trustee Brunner,
No,
trustee Brand,
Yes,
trustee Callaway,
No,
president Langfeld.
No. So now we're at the current, the original amendment to give Mike permission to post the position.
Clarifying, so post it as he has presented it as a recreation and aquatic supervisor position at 45,000.
That was the original vote.
Right, that's what we're saying, we're gonna authorize there.
I thought she made it as coordinator, because that's what was on, it said right, number 9 of the agenda. Says posting a village Parks and Recreation Coordinator. Announcement.
It is supervisor. I'm sorry. I think we printed that earlier.
Yeah,
That
supervisors on the.
particular language on
I
that.
read it from here.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
reading it from the agenda.
Yeah, I read it from-
It's on
the published agenda is aquatic supervisor.
Brian, go to page 64.
Right, 64 says, you're right, the supervisor, I just read it off here.
No,
Right,
this says- This says recreational park supervisor on the
On the
agenda.
agenda.
Yeah, it's,
It does?
Yes.
I actually, this was printed before we modified the language, the published version that went out, just the version in the room here didn't get switched.
Oh, yeah.
I apologize.
Right.
So you're asking, he's basically asking to post the current job at this starting pay of 2165, asking for a raise, the salary as a supervisor within the 2024 budget.
No.
No, this
Ron
one,
asked me to post it.
Current.
Current, okay, current. Okay.
Yeah.
And title, current rate.
So coordinator to supervisor. At the current rate.
Current.
Okay, then I guess we'll need, because that's not what Judy took off the agenda that we both have, so. The amendment is for a coordinator, so you want
no,
to
a
change.
supervisor is the amendment, right? 'Cause
No,
I
that's
think-
right, I'm just saying, right now,
Oh, right,
the
yes,
amendment,
Yeah, you're right.
you said coordinator.
Mhm.
So I need an amendment to change coordinator to supervisor,
Recreation and aquatic
supervisor. Okay. So do I have a motion to do that?
Yes, I will make the
Okay.
motion to.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this?
This is just to get the terminology of the motion to match the packet that went out to the public.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to confirm.
No, that's a good, yeah,
That's what
that,
we're-
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Um,
All opposed, same. So now we're back to the original motion to post it with the supervisor, aquatic director, and the current salary. All right, everybody clear on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Okay. Very good. We're at future agenda items. I have the one from Michael and Andy already on there. Are there any future items you would like to see?
Which two are those?
Well, it's on an audit. It's, yeah, it's nothing that came up here that's. It's one that they've asked to be put on. It has to do with the energy audit, but I don't want to talk about it because it hasn't been.
I would like to put section 206 on future agenda. Of the ordinance.
Section,
2.06 about village building rules.
oh, chapter, okay, chapter 2.
Yeah.
And which section do you want?
6. 2.06.
206.
Yes.
Okay.
2.06.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, let's, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, same. So moved. Thank you very much.
Okay.